You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
You know, at the heart of the matter, though, is the music. You know, I am a musician. I don't sample. You know, it's not Memorex. I go on stage, my microphone is on.
Hey, my name is Jason. I'm from Toronto, and I just wanted to ask Prince, what is his version of real music?
Do you have a concert ticket?
Before he created the music, he lived every bit of it.
Come on, lady, for friendly word. Get that phone, jumping on the floor. That's all I heard. Don't let the elevator break us down. No, let's go crazy. Let's get nuts. Look for the purple banana until they put us in trouble. Let's go. Come on, baby.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature, grindhouse style, where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise. And at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoid, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Next week, we are talking about juvenile rehabilitation and how it works as planned every single time. So join the sleaze.
Oh boy, are we. We decided all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover as well. Patreon subscribers also get an honor shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for 8 years. There's like 420 probably coming up on bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series, which we are slowly approaching 70 of, or maybe we have hit 70 of it.
The last one
I think
was 70,
we did
yeah.
recently. Goddamn. Okay. So if you haven't made the jump yet, patreon.com/SLEAZOIDS podcast. We recommend doing that. There is a lot of bonus content waiting for you over there. And speaking of which, we did have a bunch of people make the jump, so let's give them their shout outs here. We had Master and Commander Biden. We had Michael Riscotti. We had, this is out of order. How did this get out of order all of a sudden? Okay. We had Denim Gremlin. We had Ola Tunji Nuga. We had Cameron Dagg. Valerie Tepe. We had Joe Mann. Sorry, I thought it was McMahon, but it doesn't really spell that way, but not really. Okay, so we had Nikolai, we had Toku Denpa, we had Dick the Cock Johnson, welcome, Elia, Chris Nedo, Marco. We had a couple people taking advantage of me reading this week.
Yeah.
William Herman, Glafira May, and last but not least, June Atkins. So thanks so much to all of you folks for supporting the show, and hope you're enjoying all those bonus episodes.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody.
That's the one plug for the week. The other, as always, is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you were listening on either one of those platforms, give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the last plug, as always, is merch. If you have yet to get your Sleazoids dad cap or blowout themed poster art shirt designed by friend of the pod Brandon Lim of Black Belt Cinema, what are you waiting for? You can get those anytime you would like. There's a link in the description of this episode, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com if you have yet to get one. But that is it for the intro. Welcome back to another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I believe 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks over here on the main feed would have heard from us, where we would have had special guest filmmaker Daniel Goldhaber on the show, the writer and director behind Faces of Death, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, Cam, and he made a lot of sense to come on to do an episode on Mondo pseudo-documentary exploitation horror, of course talking about, in a double feature, the original notorious and infamous quasi-faux snuff videotape Faces of Death from 1978, which we paired with the actual archival snuff essay film Killing of America from 1981. Things got real dark.
Yeah, it was a very chill episode. One of the chillest we've ever had, absolutely. Death for 3 hours, essentially.
Yep. So if you haven't heard that episode, it was a lot of fun going over all of that with Daniel and the morality and the philosophy of putting those images into your brains and into the world. But last week, though, however, over on the Patreon exclusive for the patrons, we actually, for the first time on the show, talked about improv comedian and playwright turned new Hollywood writer-director Elaine May. We decided to do a double feature of her darkly absurd screwball comedy A New Leaf from 1971, which we paired with her much more wounded and harrowing male friendship gangster drama Mikey and Nikki from 1976, which we knew we had to do this year because it was the 50th anniversary, and we were like, it's time. We've waited too long. We got to talk about it. And Jamie watched it for the first time, and he was boy crying over there.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. I'm such a fan of Elaine May now, and she's, I mean, honestly, with all her, she's got her history in improv, so there is kind of a loose way that some of the performances go, but finding out that she pretty much went to the script and there's still this real sense of control is very impressive. She's amazing.
Hell yeah. So if you haven't heard that episode, that was last week over on the Patreon. Go back and check it out if you haven't yet. But this week, however, we are joined by a very special returning guest. She is a freelance film critic and researcher and author with bylines at The Village Voice, Reverse Shot, Film Comment, and many, many more. I couldn't possibly list them all. She has written essays for Arrow Video, for Vinegar Syndrome, and coming soon, Criterion. She is the co-author of the fantastic book Corpses, Fools, and Monsters, The History of and Future of Transness in Cinema. And she has a Patreon where you can find all of her other film writing, which you should be supporting. That guest is Willow Maclay. Willow, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be back. We're not talking about Italian sexploitation this time, but like we are talking about an artist who had his foot in disco for a little bit. So like, you know, there's some connection. There's a little bit of a connection, and I'm really excited to talk about this because the subject that we're talking about today is maybe the one figure in cinema that I am most familiar with, we are going to be talking about the artist Prince.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah. No, we're very stoked. Well, and Willow, we knew that this was going to happen basically right away. Like, I think we finished recording the Tenebrae Eva Man episode, and I think you pitched us on talking at least about one of these movies like right away. Mm-hmm. And you were like, hold this, like in the future, I will be coming back and doing this. And so we were stoked when you reached back out via email and kind of reminded us of that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, very excited to talk about this and to talk about it with someone who is so knowledgeable about this particular subject. Because I mean, Jamie and I will probably get into it, but like, I don't think Prince was someone who was like, we felt we had encyclopedic knowledge of. So going down these movies, I was like, I hadn't actually even seen one of them before, and I had no idea what I was in for Under the Cherry Moon. But we're going to be talking about Purple Rain, obviously from 1984, because we have to. It's the screen debut. It's obviously tied in with the iconic album, which was something that always surprised me. Even the first time I watched it, I was like, wait, all of this iconic music was from a movie? Yeah. Or at least it was like so directly intertwined. I never, you don't think of it. You're like, well, the album was a huge hit and then they made it into a movie. You're like, no, they were at the same time. And Under the Cherry Moon is obviously kind of more of the blank check follow-up where he got to direct the movie.
Do whatever he wanted
himself.
And he really, really did whatever he wanted.
Boy, did he direct it.
Oh, yeah. I love when an artist gets to do that, too. It's just,
me too.
It feels rare, and it's just always so eccentric and individual. And yeah, it's going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah, it's ironic that like the movie that everyone knows and loves is Purple Rain, but like the movie that's more honestly like symbolic to like everything that Prince is Under the Cherry Moon. So like I'm really excited to go down the rabbit hole of these two movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, us too. So let's do it. Let's jump into it. Let's kick things off. Let's talk about the iconic, the unique, the original Purple Rain.
That meant everything. His music. Prince. The story. The struggle. The movie. Purple Rain.
All right, we are talking Purple Rain, the 1984 quasi-autobiographical rock, musical, romance, and industry drama satire a little bit, written and directed by Albert Magnoli, co-written by William Blinn, and of course starring the iconic pop funk rock singer-songwriter Prince as the Kid, in this case a rising Minneapolis musician who tries to escape his tumultuous home life with his father, played by Clarence Williams the third, his abusive father, through music, and navigates both a romance with another singer, Apollonia, and a rivalry with another one, Morris Day, who we will get into more details about this. But this is our first time talking about Prince on the show, the iconic pioneering funk and rock musician and androgynous sex symbol, born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and responsible for a truly legendary run of albums in the 1980s, including Dirty Mind, Controversy, 1999, Around the World in a Day. That's what I had misspelt it as Around the Wild in a Day. I was like, that is not the word. I've listened to that album before. And Sign of the Times, and of course Purple Rain here, but
and the Batman soundtrack.
I was going to bring this up. The Batman soundtrack is actually, as a child, how I was introduced to
I completely blanked that was
likewise. My first favorite song was Bat Dance. So, and I don't think that's like an uncommon experience for people my age who are like super into Prince.
Yeah, that's so good.
I think mine was Purple Rain, just through pop culture at a certain point. But I'm like you, Josh. I wasn't very familiar with him at all beyond just I would see clips of his performance and I would just respect him incredibly as a performer.
Yeah, you knew the iconic songs, you knew the outfits, you knew like pop culturally who Prince was.
But I
ingested it sort of similarly.
Yeah, and it's something that he really, I think, respected as an artist is like an album, something like a statement. And so it's something I absolutely need to dive more into, because every single track in both of these movies is fire, every single one. So
every single,
it's kind of wild, to be honest.
It's actually so wild that there are parts of me, then we'll get into it, but like there's parts of this movie that I watch and I'm just like, this song is so much better than the scene it's even being used for it's kind of mind blowing. Like I'd completely forgotten that like When Doves Cry is like just like a sad montage of him driving around. And I'm like, I enjoy the montage, but I'm like, the song has such a life outside of this movie montage.
Yeah. And apparently When Doves Cry was also made in a day. He produced that in a day.
That's true.
Which is just, I mean, as someone that attempts to write music, that is just unbelievable to write something just so iconic in a day's time. It's also like there's a confidence to that. Like a lot of the time I think spent writing is editing and going like, does that work? Does that work? He just clearly had this, I already know it works as soon as he's laying it out and composing it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so the story of the music in this movie is pretty interesting because Prince came to director Albert Magnoli with 100 songs, and he and Magnoli talked about like which songs that they actually wanted to use in the film, and some of the songs that actually ended up in the movie weren't actually part of that grouping of 100 songs, and When Doves Cry was one of those songs that was not part of that original batch of songs. Magnoli came to Prince with that montage and was like, I need a song to go with this montage that like kind of recaps all of the thematic and plotting and emotional interest in the movie. And he came back in 24 hours with When Doves Cry. And it's just
crazy.
That's like, so ridiculous. Like imagine you're told, hey, I need like a really functional expository thing to just paper over this scene that I want to do. Can you just come back with me like tomorrow with something? And it's When Doves Cry. And it's important to note that When Doves Cry is the biggest song of 1984. It's number one on the year in Billboard Hot 100. Yeah. And Warner Brothers released the film I believe 8 weeks prior to the film in order to hype up the film itself. So the order of release went the When Doves Cry single,
and then the Purple Rain album a few weeks after that, and then the film. So there was this huge buzz around the movie because of When Doves Cry. And When Doves Cry almost doesn't happen. Like, it's a completely, like, it's an accidental moment where, like, if Magnolia doesn't come to Prince with that problem, we may not have When Doves Cry. And the film may not be as big as it is. It's this domino effect where, like, everything came together perfectly.
And they also clearly knew what Prince exactly would sell first, in a sense, going into the marketing of, like, we're going to have this single, the album, something that he's kind of stamped into the culture that he's an unbelievable musician. And then it causes the movie to have this snowball effect. And then you watch it, and honestly, as a performer, he's incredibly entertaining. There's some tonal things in this movie that I find pretty strange at times. But never not, like, it's always captivating. That's the thing about him, is even when I'm questioning certain themes or, you know, pacing maybe, I'm constantly engaged, and I find he's always doing these, you know, eccentric things with his performance, or, you know, and it coming from 84, it's like having that whole montage thing that happens a lot in this time period really does help with him.
Oh, yeah, you could play this back to back with Rocky 4 and you wouldn't be too confused about it. Or I'll maybe even more accurately, Streets of Fire, which came out the same year by Walter Hill, which is a movie I thought about a lot when I was watching this when I was younger, because I liked Streets of Fire as well, and I don't know why I was watching these movies. I think my mom really liked movie musicals, but she liked also, like, she was one of the people who, like, dressed up to go to, like, Rocky Horror screenings and showed me, like, Feed Me Seymour and, like, all this kind of stuff when I was younger. So Streets of Fire was something I naturally got to. Purple Rain I eventually got to, and I kind of briefly became obsessed with, like, this, like, neon new wave kind of, like, synthy dreamy kind of thing that both of those films were doing. But I find it just so interesting in particular here because Prince is, I mean, he wills this thing into existence, right? Like, that's kind of the thing that makes this as special and weird as it is.
It was a situation where, like, Prince hadn't completely crossed over and become a, like, gigantic megawatt superstar before Purple Rain.
Because what was the album before? Was that
1999? Which had hits on it. It did get some MTV airplay, despite the fact that those were his first top 10 hits, though, right? Exactly. And none of them were a number one, right? Like, that's what I find so fascinating, is that he only, you know, like, he had only started getting play on MTV alongside people like Michael Jackson. He got his first ever Grammy nomination right then, and he immediately leveraged that into, I'm starring in a studio film, which is, like, such a ballsy move. He had so much confidence about, like, his gifts and his goals. So, like, just to set the scene a little bit.
Please.
So prior to Purple Rain, Prince hasn't crossed over completely. Like I said, 1999 is a huge album, but it's not as big as, like, Thriller, for example. So, like, nothing's as big as Thriller, but Purple Rain comes close in 1984. But with 1999, Prince had a lot of momentum. He had hits off of that album. Songs like Little Red Corvette and the title track off of that album were, like, big MTV staples. And this was a time when MTV wasn't really playing black artists. That changes a bit after Thriller, because Michael Jackson basically blackmailed the television station into playing, like, his John Landis music video, which, you know, that opened the door for everybody. And Prince benefited from that greatly. But, like,
until they heard some of those sexually explicit lyrics on, like, Dirty Mind, and they were like, maybe not.
He did make some singles off of 1999 that did have very sexually explicit lyrics and sexually explicit imagery within the music videos, and those didn't really get played. Like, in the music video for Automatic, like, he's, like, laying on a bed and getting whipped by his band members while he's singing about, like, having sex. It's like I don't know where he thought that was going to get played, but, like, he made it anyway. Like, he follows from the beat of his own drum, like, and I love that about him. So, but, like, prior to 1999, like, he's kind of an opening act for a lot of artists. Like, he was opening for Rick James, and they kind of had a little bit of a feud. And prior to that, he opened for the Rolling Stones, and that was a disaster because they flung homophobic and racist insults at him. So he hadn't crossed over into this white audience that he wanted. He wanted to cross over completely and be like this superstar to every single type of artist. It's important to remember that in the 80s, radio stations are segregated. And I think that part of the makeup of his band is also kind of interested in this disarticulation of gender and race and sex. So you have a lot of people in the revolution who are who go across gender lines and sexualities and race. So he's trying
and the Revolution is his backing band, who he finally formed with Purple Rain, correct?
Yes. So some of the band is in place for 1999, but I remember like Wendy Melvon, who plays guitar, and we see in this movie with quite a bit of scenes for like a band member. I think she has the second most amount of dialogue. So she is in this lot, and she's gay, and so is Lisa Coleman, the keyboardist. And so he goes to Warner Brothers after 1999 is kind of a big deal. And he's like, I want to make a movie. And he wants to make a movie kind of that's personal and about his life. So Albert Magnoli signs on. He sends him the script, which Prince finds a lot of personal significance with. He thought that the movie, he thought that the script based on his life actually did echo a lot of the things that he had experienced. The full depth of that is kind of enigmatic, and we don't know all of those details because Prince is always a little bit mysterious. But Ezra Edelman, the director of OJ Made in America, was going to make like a big Prince documentary for Netflix that was like 10 hours long, and he was going to like open up the doors for all of this stuff. It's currently like not going to be released because the Prince estate is preventing that from happening. But he suggested that Purple Rain is actually really, really accurate to like his experiences within his own,
just like with his parents' divorce,
with his parents, and with the experience that he had with his father. Prince is sometimes very direct about this, and it makes it's interesting for Purple Rain because it kind of creates this tension and kind of a darkness in the movie that I think is really strange for a movie that's basically like a commercial for an artist to kind of become like the biggest pop star in the world, because there's some things about this movie that are like uncomfortable, and I think that don't exactly present Prince in the best light. But the sheer power of his performance makes everyone just like fall in love with him, and the music is obviously incredible. And he gets this movie made with Warner Brothers, and they greenlight it for like a small budget. And
it sounded like he tried to shop it around too, and like other studios weren't that interested. And then I was like, they all regretted not being interested in that when they were like, wait, we could have made the movie that was tied into the most popular and acclaimed like record-selling album of the year and of the decade, probably, or at least up there. God.
Yeah, the movie I do find at times strange in that way that like he is presented as very troubled at times and I mean abusive in many moments, and the movie I think definitely wrestles with that, and then at other times I think kind of washes over it very simply, almost as if with a smirk and a flirtatious like confidence, and I get really mixed up with it. I found as I was watching it, because this was the first time I've ever seen this movie, strangely enough, for how big it is. And so I had no idea, like, the scenes at the lake with Apollonia. I always had trouble saying that. Apollonia.
Can you believe that's her legal name? Like, Prince didn't actually give that name to her. That was just her middle name.
I actually didn't know. I figured that was her artist name. That's oh wow.
It's amazing.
And so when there's scenes like that courting scene, and we'll get into the details, but it does come off like he is almost bullying her, and then it ends up being more of a courtship and something that she's into. I found it to be, without Prince having his like trademark confidence and swagger, it would absolutely not work in any other context. And it's almost like they're playing with that, but in another sense, I find myself still
in both these movies. He is incredibly like, he's the most confident sexual being that's ever lived, and everyone who comes into his orbit, needs to kind of almost like adjust to that or something. Yes. And they need to.
This is the thing too. Like, he'll do a scene where he's flirting with somebody. He does this kind of in both movies, where he's flirting with someone, and it won't necessarily even be smooth. It's almost arguably awkward, but because he doesn't take it as that, he takes it as if he just did the coolest thing in the world. He kind of sells it to you, And it's the strangest feeling, because I'm like, that absolutely did not work, man. That was awkward as hell. That interaction was strange. You're kind of being weird. And yet he still smirks at the camera, gives them a little wink, mogs everybody. Like, you know, it's just I don't know. I had this constant wrestling with that a little bit. But in a very entertaining way.
I totally get that. I still wrestle with that stuff, even though this has got to be the third, maybe even fourth time I've probably seen this film at this point, because I watched it before I even had a Letterboxd account a few times. And every time, I said this when I was writing about it, but like every time I sit down to watch this movie, I actually imagine it as just the Streets of Fire concert sequences. And I forget how much of the movie is also this angsty, part campy, backstage showbiz, like full-on romance melodrama. It's ambitious in terms of like really giving him screen time, giving him, you know, like actual lines to have to deliver, giving him drama and things that he's wrestling with, like both the really, really earnest and grounded stuff that, Willow, you were already talking about, like the autobiographical upbringing by his abusive father. And that stuff is pretty harrowing every time it cuts to that. And then it will move on to this romance stuff, which is a little bit more sort of like almost like devilishly flirtatious. Like he's a bit of an annoying brat, but at the same time, he clearly does have some real feelings here. And then there's also like interband and sort of industry drama. Like some of the bandmates are writing some songs and he's not listening to them because he's not a collaborator. He's selfish. And it's, you know, part of this personal journey I imagine he probably actually did go through of like, how is this going to be expressed through the art? But the stuff that's really hilarious about it, I think personally, is just the setup itself, which is this unbelievable industry drama where he opens the film with a Streets of Fire-esque sequence, just neon synth glam rock concert. He's playing Let's Get Crazy. Everyone fucking loves this song. The editing is incredibly propulsive. It's worth talking about. We'll get into it, that Albert Magnoli was an editor before he was a director, and it shows in the making of this movie. Just cut to the drum beat. It's an electric song. The stage showmanship is amazing. His hip thrusting while doing a guitar solo in that outfit is amazing. And the drama of this movie is that you're watching other people be like, huh, this is shitty, or like this wouldn't sustain a house band gig in Minneapolis. Like the nightclub owner watching Let's Get Crazy absolutely just demolish an audience is like, this isn't good enough. You're on thin ice, man.
There's this disorientation with it where Prince is obviously like a notch above like everyone else in this movie as far as the performances go, and that's not to knock anything else, because I love the time and I think that that they're fun in their own way. But like the actual like concert, the filmed concert stuff, which was actually shot at First Avenue in Minnesota. It was a famous rock and dance club that like every band went through, including like bands like The Replacements and Husker Du. All of that stuff is shot so beautifully, and Prince and the Revolution are so overwhelming that I think that it creates this image in people's minds about like what exactly Purple Rain is. I think a lot of people who haven't actually seen the movie just assume that it's this jukebox musical with the band performing on stage, but there's actually a lot of like strange elements to it, where I think if like people come to this movie and they're like, oh my God, like this guy is actually like a sexist creep, but like you know, it's melodramatic, but like it actually like it's like he actually like gets at something personal that I think pretty awesome.
He's kind of exercising some demons alongside showing you concert footage of some of the best music you've ever seen. And it's just the whiplash I find sometimes between those two things is interesting and revealing, and it is actually personal and says something about like who he is as an artist, and he didn't mind experimentally clashing and upsetting genres in order to, you know, to express something. And I think that's what ultimately wins me over about this movie, is it still feels personal and expressive, even though you are watching what is like flagrantly like really sentimental self-mythologizing about himself. We'll talk about in comparison to Under the Cherry Moon later, but like everyone kind of really dings that film for being a vanity project. I actually think that film is kind of less of a vanity project than this one. Like this is the one.
I mean,
this is the one that is like, we're propping up Prince as the best thing ever. It just, it calls its shot because Purple Rain is the best thing ever.
I mean,
so you're like, you can't disagree.
And it must be said too that like Donald E. Thorin, the cinematographer on this, shoots the hell out of all of the concert footage. So
both films, he hired someone who had just shot an amazing film. He looked at Thief that he shot for Michael Mann in 81 and was like, let's get that guy. And then for the next one we'll talk about it, it's Bauhaus, who was Fassbinder in Scorsese's and had just shot After Hours. So like Prince clearly had taste when it came to like hiring people who would make his movies look beautiful.
And Thief is the reason why they wanted him in the first place, because they wanted Purple Rain to have that kind of metallic noir look to it in the scenes outside of the club. And then like when he's actually in the club and everything, on the commentary track on the film, Donald E. Thorin talked about how like his main point of influence through all of this was looking at Cabaret and then seeing how he could use how that film used concert footage and how he could apply it to Purple Rain. But obviously Purple Rain is not kind of emanating with the same kind of darkness that Cabaret is. But I do think that there is a kind of propulsive energy to what Purple Rain is projecting that still feels very lively and powerful to this day. And I think that Thorin, with this movie and Thief, he kind of creates the look of the American film of the 1980s, because I think that so many movies after this copy the look of Thief and Purple Rain. And it must be said too that like Miami Vice becomes a popular television show like 2 seconds after this, and like some of the artists that Prince worked with were on that show consistently, like Sheila E. And you know, we kind of just
I was like, wasn't Prince on an episode?
No, but
he wasn't.
He was not.
Who am I thinking of? They had so many musician cameos.
You might be thinking of Little Richard. Little Richard was in an episode.
Maybe I am,
because Prince took a lot of influence from Little Richard.
Oh yeah, I can see that absolutely. And also just like speaking on the vanity project aspect of it, this one is, you know, it's centralized with him being a rock star. Like without him being this kind of unbelievable genius musician, the whole plot.
I also want to highlight though a rock star before he's actually a rock star, which is maybe my favorite detail of the entire film. And what I mean by that is that he's already got his custom purple bike. He's got his crazy outfits. Yeah. He already has his full stylish, like I'm a rock star garb and persona and style. Everything about him is fully formed when this movie starts. But the concept of the movie is that he's a little guy who hasn't made it yet. He's part of a shitty house band that nobody likes. Right. At the beginning of the movie, driving around in the Prince outfit. Like it makes no sense, but it's awesome.
Well, and what I think it does is it creates this thought in your mind that this is an artist and a man of confidence within himself and within his artistry already. He doesn't need the approval of everyone else or the industry to say he's big or the people to even say he's big. He's already has it figured out. He just needs to expose it to the world now. And that kind
it's
of
true, but there's something so
unreal.
Funny about him on that bike riding back to his home. I'm like, dude, how did you even afford that bike?
There's totally, I agree with that. There is this strange like dream world contrast between him having these unbelievably elaborate outfits that I think you could only get fitted by like professional tailor fashion designers and everything. And then, you know, the luxurious boots and the motorcycle. And then he goes to his parents' house, which is just, you know, this very normal looking home with like
it's production designed to be this like drab childhood home where his, you know, musician father, played by Clarence Williams III, who we've talked about a few times in Deep Cover and like Tales from the Hood, regularly is beating his mom in like these, you know, really sad and upsetting, like sort of like drunken, you know, domestic abuse sequences. And it's just watching Prince take the like flamboyant motorcycle home in his outfit to a scene like that. It's just, like it's like normally you would say, well, they would have him in like, you know, they try to make it a little bit more realistic, but he's like, no, I'm already my fully formed Prince self. And it gives it this feeling like he's he's walking through this like memories that he's had before. It gives it this weird dreamy quality where you're just like, this is, which is actually obviously what's happening. It's Prince restaging these events of his life, which, as Willow already highlighted, like might be even more accurate than the estate wants to say. And, you know, really wrestling with that. It brings some power to, I think, when you get these teary-eyed close-ups of him really feeling tormented watching this recreation of his father, like his mother, and really thinking about that.
Yeah, you mentioned that. There's actually one sequence in the film that is actually lifted from an exact conversation that Prince remembered that he experienced with his father when he was a child, where his father, after they had kind of a confrontation, he said to Prince, "I would die for you," and that's where the song from that came from. And the scene in the film is actually a complete recreation of that, and it's actually Prince's best moment of acting in the entire movie. And I think that working with Clarence Williams is fantastic for him, because I think that Clarence Williams grounds him and makes him more comfortable as an actor, because it must be said, Clarence Williams is the only professional actor in this movie. Everyone else is an amateur. They were musicians. This was their first time acting. At the time, everyone like criticized the film. I'd say everyone, I mean critics. They criticized the movie for having like very poor acting and just like, you know, they only really liked Morris Day because he's such a ham. But like, I actually
he plays such a hilariously arrogant asshole in the movie.
He's so funny in this movie. But yeah, I think that Prince actually does have a couple of good scenes and of like showing that he did have potential as an actor if he wanted to go down that path completely. And he didn't. And obviously we're better off for the fact that he focused on being a musician instead. But there are a couple of moments that I find very affecting in this movie, because they illuminate something very personal, and I think it comes off on the screen as something personal, where like maybe we're seeing something we're not supposed to, and like the facade of like the Prince, the image like gets cloudy with like Prince, the actual like flesh and blood person, and he almost never wanted to show that to us.
Yeah, it does feel, again, even the way it enters is like him saying, there's something, I can't remember, what's the opening song? Where
Let's Go Crazy.
Okay, and he's talking about going through life together, and then he even says, we'll like go on to the afterworld. It just feels like this very this transition into like a dream world kind of thing. And so it feels like you're getting more of an artist version of Prince rather than, you know, what he's exposing himself only so much in a way. Beyond the family stuff is very harrowing and very personal, and I think that's pretty unbelievable that someone that usually it comes off very mysterious would be willing to expose that in such a vulnerable
way. Not only
That's
put it in the
unreal.
movie, but like put it in like the pop movie that you haven't even really had a number one hit yet, and you're like already forcing a studio to make a movie about you and like airing this part of your life to everyone, while also making your, you know, obviously maybe he didn't know, but like making your most popular album that would be directly tied into all this. Like this stuff is now completely inseparable from the songs, and it changes how I listen to some of the songs and how flagrantly personal and emotional the lyrics are. Like, you know, when Doves Cry hit and you hear him singing like, maybe I'm just like my father and maybe you're just like my mother, I think some of these scenes recontextualize those lines for you, and you're like, that's pretty dark stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas I feel like, and we'll get to it more in detail, obviously, but with Cherry Moon, because it's not wrapped around necessarily his rock star persona or the specific artist we know as Prince, it's that feels almost more exposing to me in a sense of his personality and what he finds funny and interesting, and what kind of art speaks to him, like what he's referencing and all of that. And this just feels like I'm getting to know him a little bit, because there's stuff that's undeniable there, but there's still this rock star thing that's wrapped around him a little bit. Even when he's doing, again, like when he's doing the courtship stuff and the flirting stuff, I feel like he's still putting on a bit of an act, the way that he
definitely is.
And then when he's, I mean, when
that stuff is funny though, like all the stuff when he's like, look, you understand why he doesn't go home after the nightclub and why he's out and about on the town and why he begins to ride around on his custom bike and he's romancing the new girl in town, Apollonia, obviously played by Apollonia Cotero, who was part of the Apollonia 6. And because I think I read this, he Willow, he tried to get, was it Vanity from Vanity 6?
Yeah. Vanity 6 was one of Prince's numerous masterminded side projects where like he kind of wrote all the songs for them and then like presented them to like this group. So in the time leading up to Purple Rain, Prince kind of is the mastermind behind this idea of the Minneapolis sound, which is this very kind of spacious, robust kind of funk rock for the 80s, which is very minimalist in its production, where you kind of have these brand new like Lindrum sounds, and the Oberheim synths are kind of standing in for where horns would be in kind of the more 60s and 70s kind of Motown production. So he kind of masterminds this idea of this entire genre of music, which I think kind of clarifies what the 80s would sound like going forward after Purple Rain. But Vanity 6 was one of those bands. The Time was one of those bands. We see Andre Simone for like 2 seconds in this movie performing on stage. That was one of his bands. And Vanity 6 was one of those acts. And I'm unsure if Vanity was going to like be in this movie specifically, but like Prince kind of had a rocky relationship with some of these artists. And yeah, it ended up being Apollonia. Apollonia 6 ends up being kind of a reconstruction of Vanity 6. And the sex shooter song that was created for this movie was actually a Prince demo initially.
That makes a lot of sense. I listened to that song and I kind of went, damn, that's one that Prince should have had his name on. Because people would have been like, that feels very him.
Yeah, there's a CD of his that came out 10-ish years ago called Originals, which just took the original demo tracks that Prince did of songs that he gave to other artists. So there's a version of Sex Shooter on there. There's Manic Monday. There's Nothing Compares to You. There's all these songs that became hits that he wrote for other artists. And it's an unreal body of work for the 1980s and the early part of the 1990s, where it seemed like he was just completely unstoppable. Like everything that he did, like kind of became this enormous hit, or was at the very least just like very musically appealing.
Yeah, I mean, and the movie feels like an extension of how he would collaborate with these people, or how he would try to work with, like, form a community of a sound. And that's why I find it interesting that, like, yeah, maybe it results in some very amateurish acting from these people who aren't professionals, but it does, speak to how he wanted to work with people and how he wanted to have people who were his friends take part in what he was making. And so I watched the scenes between him and Apollonia, and I go, yeah, neither of these two are very good actors to sell this as like a really, the actual romance melodrama aspect of this. But like the music is expressive enough and the intent is there on these two beautiful people, I think enough for you to kind of go with it. And Prince knew Morris Day dating back to high school. They went to high school together, and everyone in the time was like part of Prince's high school band, which was called Grand Central Station, aka Sex Machine. And they were, so like the time like sound like Prince because Prince was basically like giving them songs and like instructing them on how to play those songs. And he's a control freak, but like he earns it though, because like, hey, the songs are good too. You get up and you listen to Morris Day come, and then Morris Day comes up and he's hyper confident. He's like, check this shit, I'm gonna blow you out of the water, Prince. And you're like, okay, come on, buddy. And then he goes up there and you're like, okay, yeah, he's pretty good. It's not Let's Go Crazy, but it's good.
Yeah. And it's a different kind of energy than what Prince brings to stage, where I think that Prince in this movie particularly is like doing like it's a very emotional kind of onstage performance where like he's excavating a lot of the plot elements through music. Like there's that beautiful scene where he's playing The Beautiful Ones, where he's like
So
like
good.
asking Apollonia, like, who do you actually want to be with? And so he screams at the end of that song. And I've always been fascinated in the way that Prince's scream has kind of a multivariant effect to it, where like it's not just screaming for the sake of screaming. It has meaning behind it, whether that's a release.
No, it's very expressive. When he is
so
screaming,
expressive.
like, do you want me? You know,
Yeah.
like, and he's down and I feel
It's
it. Like
so good.
that's what I think is powerful, because you watch some of the scenes where he's trying to express that, like, you know, let's say in a scene where he's being very mean in his flirting with her, where he like takes her to the lake and he's like, you need to purify yourself on the lake, and he, you know, very, very much hints that she should go skinny dipping right there, and then ends up being that, you know, she ends up getting soaking wet and it wasn't right, and he threatens to like drive away and leave her there without all her clothes. She can't even get into her tight leather clothes because she's so wet and all this stuff, and he has that line where he's like, don't get my seat all wet and all like that kind of stuff. And there's something about it that, you know, again, it feels amateurish, but also I think just in there's something childish about Prince too, like in what his sense of humor is and what he thinks of this kind of stuff. And that's where I think people lose track with it, because they like that doesn't play as romantic to some people. That plays as him just being like an annoying asshole. But then you get to him singing directly to her on the stage like that, and you get, you know, Thorin shooting it, and, you know, the push in on her face watching that performance as he screams singing the ending of that song, and you're just like, I get it. I see it.
That's the thing. I find it within his performances. I feel like those are more raw and real. But the stuff where he's flirting with her, I do find myself getting completely turned off at a certain point. And when you mix the aspect of him treating her kind of incredibly poorly, especially at a certain point, in contrast to the performances that do feel like he's being honest and being like, I love you, and he's exposing himself, those two things back and forth almost feel manipulative at a certain point. Where
Can I ask both of you about one specific detail?
Yeah.
What is the deal with him playing the recording of the girl crying backwards so that it sounds like the woman is laughing and moaning, and it's like meant to be like the sex music to like be like, we're, you know, he's about to go to bed with Apollonia and he's going to get into the really, you know, they're going to get pretty sensual with the undressing from behind and him straight up feeling her crotch up like on screen. Like I was like, this has got to be pretty scandalous for a pop musician. And you know, but the detail of him being like, I'm gonna play this weird sounds of girls crying backwards for you, these were some of the details where I was just like, is this supposed to be like charming, or is this
I know it kind of felt like it was more built into the mystery and his kind of strange like seduction that he does have, even though there is something about his flirting in both of these movies that come off as like it's challenging, and that seems to be what like the women find enticing. Now I feel like it goes a little too extreme, and that's why it doesn't necessarily work for me. But even
in this one specifically, he is also addressing it because he is trying to show that he does have an ugly and a jealous side as a character as well, right? Which you know, it comes out a bit when he's professionally threatened, which he takes personally, because there's the Revolution bandmates Lisa and Wendy, Willow already highlighted, who are annoyed that he won't listen to or engage with their song compositions, not collaborating with them, basically calling him a self-centered asshole and paranoid and all this kind of stuff. But then it's also the aspect of he, especially with Apollonia, the dark side of him is coming out because he feels like he's sort of intergenerationally been poisoned by his father, and maybe he thinks of his father as like, that's how you're supposed to engage with women and all this kind of stuff. And there's scenes later, obviously, where he ends up hitting her, and then he ends up, you know, part of the, you know, so some of this stuff is in here deliberately as like he is not in like a very good space when it comes to how to have a relationship with a woman. Like that's a part of the text of the movie as well. But,
I think that one of the more interesting things about Purple Rain that I've never quite been able to like wrap my hands around, despite being like just this massive Prince fan, is that the movie is full of all of these contradictions where I can recognize that like he's an abusive partner and he's being sexist towards her, but I'm also like a little bit pulled into their relationship because I think that it has kind of like an emotional through line in the fact that they're telling a story about perpetuating abuse. But regarding regarding specifically that tape of him playing a tape of a woman crying, but it's played backwards. In his like little dungeon with like full of mirrors and lit candles. It's such a
crazy set.
It's such a strange set, which kind of suggests that like Prince is kind of a figure who like has like all of these factors of personality that are like evasive. But I think that Prince is drawn towards sounds of feminine vulnerability and even feminine pain. I think if you do a deep dive of his discography, there are more than a few songs where like a woman will just flat out scream. She will scream her lungs out like she's in a fucking horror movie. The long version of Computer Blue, which is like 15 minutes long, has one moment where a woman...
Great performance in the film, too.
Yeah,
that's the one where he's all like shirtless and sweaty, right? With the masquerade ball mask on. Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, and the version in the film is a truncated version. Like the actual full length of the song is closer to 15 minutes. And a woman screams during that song in order to pull it into the next section of it. And I think that he's drawn towards this. And I think that one interesting thing is Prince got very, very invested in like the sonic and aesthetic textures of David Lynch around the time of 1981, 82. According to Jill Jones, who is in this movie as like a barista in the club, she said that Prince became obsessed with the movie Eraserhead, to the point where he was watching it constantly. And the sound and the sounds that he was drawn towards in Eraserhead influenced the production style of 1999. And I think that kind of dark, subversive, surreal element is something that he was interested in. That's
a collaboration we should have gotten.
I know, right? And I think that Prince being fascinated by the sound of playing a woman crying backwards is that kind of same kind of interest. Lynch, sure. It's so Lynch, and like that's just me theorizing. But like
that's a good argument. I posed that to you, not knowing what the end. That's not a bad argument.
Yeah. It certainly adds a dark element into the scene that they're having, because it's kind of a happy moment where she gifts him this guitar that he was longing for, like he was too broke to purchase.
In the pawn shop, yeah.
Yeah, never mind the fact that he could afford this expensive motorcycle, but like he can't afford the guitar. But like this is not a movie where you want to like look for plot holes or anything. But like,
you're not thinking about at a certain point. You're not thinking about it that way. You are like, this is just an artist personally expressing parts of themselves on the screen, and there's not much control, and sometimes there's like a messy factor to it. But a friend of the pod, Chris Cabin, I thought had a great line in his review where he was just like, look, if it wasn't a little messy and hard to excuse at times, it wouldn't be worthy of this man. Like,
absolutely.
I totally see that.
And I will say too, when it comes to the vocalization when he's screaming at the end of certain songs, and he does it in multiple songs, which I realized I have to do a deep dive of him, because that vocal style in general is amazing. I love when a singer can kind of do this, because he's still pitched, he's still hitting a note. It's not like it's not like a yell from metal music or something like that. It's still very melodic. And that mix takes such control. So the mix between like raw emotion that gives off and control to still be musical is really difficult. And I think he's an unbelievable performer in that sense too.
His falsetto isn't like thin and spacey at all. It has a lot of depth to it. Like he's like, and it has a lot of depth to it that I think is really fascinating. That like you'll hear it in like his falsetto in Kiss isn't the same kind of falsetto that you would hear him using on a track like Soft and Wet. It's from a completely different like he's an incredible vocalist in addition to everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned the guitar. The guitar moment where she gifts it to him. I thought that was interesting. For the scene before, I think she's with Morris, the singer of Is It the Time? Is that
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
band?
the time.
Yeah, the time. And he's also the guy that he's introduced by bringing his own mirror to the club and in this big yellow
Dude, his
suit and everything.
pink
It's
cane
awesome.
and like squawk laugh that he does in that insanely moronic "Who's on First" bit he does with Jerome. Or he,
Oh, that's so
or
funny.
it's like you know whatever what's the password to the club, and it's like got it. It's like that dude where's my car bit.
Honestly, there's such
sweet.
there's such a confidence about Morris Day's performance that I found him to be very convincing as this kind of, you know, the antagonist, but also comedic relief. It felt like they gave him a lot of the time. Because Prince is often being so mysterious and serious about what's going on or performing the way that he does, that a lot of the time they gear it towards Morris to be a little bit more of the funny guy, but at the same time, the guy that he's up against. I also find it interesting, though, because you focus so much on Prince and he's more exposed as a character and more vulnerable, which is a good thing. But because the other character, specifically with Morris, he's not as much. Sometimes I get this thought of, like, is Morris that bad of a guy compared to what Prince is doing in this movie?
He's just an asshole.
And that's the thing. He's just kind of an
Mostly.
asshole, and he is an asshole. Like, he says things like when Prince's dad attempts suicide, he says something like, "How's the family?" Like, he's a piece of shit for sure. It's just that with everything we see that gets exposed with Prince, again, making him an interesting character. I think that you don't get as much time with some of the other characters, specifically Morris and Apple, that is just like, I wish that we had more time with them so that they felt as fleshed out, and those moments with when they're supposed to all kind of intertwine with each other had more weight as characters rather than just like what Prince is being used for, if that makes sense. It's just like because it's the same thing with Apollyon. How do you say? I'm sorry, I keep getting it every single time. Apollonia. Apollonia. She doesn't have a lot of actual moments where you feel like you get her backstory, besides, like, you know, yearning to be a singer and having this kind of this drive to want to be a star.
Being very pointedly
talented.
Called a slut via our performance of Darling Nikki in front of everyone.
Sure, yeah. And also it feels like the entire time she is kind of the tool that's being used between the two. And it's more focused on Prince in general, because you don't get a lot with Morris either. But it's just all those things I find to be, it makes me view Prince in this strange way. And I think it's kind of what I was saying in the beginning, but that's just with more detail, I suppose, connected to the other characters.
Like the elephant in the room with Purple Rain is that it has an Apollonia problem. Like she's an object, and I love the movie, but like the movie has almost nothing for her, and right. I think that there's this kind of very retrograde kind of like masculine kind of conflict between Prince and Morris Day, where like I wonder sometimes, like, it would be a completely different movie, but like if it was just about music, if it was just a Battle of the Bands thing. But like I think the fact that Purple Rain fails sometimes, I think, is actually really interesting, because I think that Prince's limitations are revealing in the same way as his genius is, where I think Prince had like, he had a clear vision for what he wanted to do cinematically, and we'll get into that with Under the Cherry Moon in a little bit, but I think that it's fascinating to watch him grasp and reach and kind of come up a little bit short, in contrast to his musical performances, which he's obviously like as good as a performer can possibly be. And I do like find that very revealing. Can we get into Darling Nikki for a minute? Because like, Jesus Christ,
absolutely.
Like it's such
what a song. It's such an incredible song and an erotic performance that it makes you forget that like he's being such an asshole in that moment. And I also didn't realize that was the song that is the reason why parental advisory stickers exist.
It's so funny, because like the story is that Tipper Gore's daughter, like she bought the Purple Rain CD and she was listening to it with her mom First mistake. And then they get to and then they get around to Darling Nikki, like they're like in a car or whatever, right? And like she hears Darling Nikki and she is just like flabbergasted and just like, oh my God, I have to do something about this. I have to stop this person from corrupting the youth of America. And so she makes this list. They're
getting too funky and too
they
horny.
They are. So she creates she with the PMRC create this list of the quote unquote filthy 15, which is 15 songs that she wanted to ban from radio play due to sexual content, drug content, or like occult like imagery. So like heavy
metal. Have to come with a trademark too, though.
Exactly.
Like filthy 15. It's got to be snappy.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
So like you've got a bunch of bands on that list, like Judas Priest and Wasp, and even Venom made it on it. Good for Venom. For everyone listening to this podcast that's like into heavy metal. But the interesting thing is there's like 3 songs that Prince wrote on that list. There's also like Sheena Easton's Sugar Walls, which like it doesn't take a genius to like decipher that metaphor. And so Darling Nikki is the reason why that happens, and it's because Purple Rain is as big as it is, and that moment in particular, why the parental advisory sticker exists, like you said, Josh. So if like in addition to everything else that Purple Rain gave us, they gave us this sticker that told teenagers that this is a cool album to buy.
Yes. That is really what it ended up being. You're like,
it's so
I need
funny
to get
how
my
much it
hands on that.
backfired. It was like a buy this sticker. Like check it out.
It's like for the freaks in film where you're just like, this is banned in several countries. You're like, oh, I have to watch it now.
Like how the video Nasties was a canon.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah. Now I'm just morbidly curious. That's all it's gonna do.
The performance of Darling Nikki is also awesome, even though it's a moment of really open cruelty, obviously, by Prince as a character. I think that speaks to Jamie's point, where you're kind of like, that is maybe the worst thing that someone does to Apollonia in the movie, worse than anything that Morris Day does.
And I do love that Prince is willing to expose himself. That's another thing that I struggle with, is that he is willing to do that, where so many of these, whatever it be, a pseudo biopic, an actual biopic or whatever, they don't really get real with how, they might be struggling with certain things, or at least were at one point in their life. And so there's something there too that I still I have immense respect for. And
yeah, I mean, he's doing it in a messy way, but you can tell that through these kind of awkwardly acted and maybe dramatic cliches he's operating in, he is trying to point out that like he's someone who has experienced a lot of pain in his home life and in his personal relationships, and he's trying to express that through the movies. And sometimes it comes out in a bit of a janky way, because I don't think that he is a naturally born genius actor and filmmaker in the way that he is a musician. But man, when those songs play, you do like, I totally agree. I find they overwhelm you. Everything that's silly or simple about some of the story beats, I end up being like, when they're expressed through this like psychedelic, like rock opera dream, I am like all in. And I'm like, here he is, like his funky, horny alien star power that he has when he just hits that stage, and the lighting choices that they do and the editing choices that they make, and like those sequences in particular, and which is why it's such a hugely important thing that like after the extended, maybe the most harrowing section of the movie, which is when he comes home to find his father in the basement having attempted suicide by shooting himself in the head, and there's images in here that feel extremely personal of him tearfully like looking at the rope and looking at the police chalk, and
very tactile editing too in this montage. Like you really get a feel for the space. Like the key goes into the door, the gun goes off, and then like the disorientation of Prince being surrounded by the police officers and the chalk outline on the floor. And you get this very strange flash image of Prince hanging from a noose, which is really, really, really dark. When the suicidal ideation stuff and all the music sheets on the dingy basement floor, like some of the imagery here is really striking and really personal, and like that is the jumping off point to get you into his big climactic stage performance of Purple Rain. And like that's the section of the movie where I just find myself like completely like my heart is totally in the movie at that point after that sequence, and then listening to him live perform essentially Purple Rain for the full like song time as well, like how they just really do full out go for it.
My favorite double encore.
Yeah, my favorite moment with the camera in the entire film happens like right after the suicide attempt, after he's like rips the room apart and discovered the fact that his father actually does write his own music. Prior to that, he told Prince that he kept all of it in his head, but he lied to him about that. Like he wrote all of his music. And so we get the camera pushing down a hallway in an unsteady kind of like camera shot as it's moving down the hallway with all this golden light falling on the hallway with the new morning. And we keep going down the hallway and we hear the demo tape that Wendy and Lisa have created for what we understand as like the opening chords to Purple Rain. And the whole conflict of the movie the entire time has been that he doesn't want to actually collaborate with his bandmates, that he's too much of a self-centered prick in order to accept another person into his own life. But then the camera keeps pushing down the hallway, and then like it hits the end of the hallway and like pans to the right, and we see Prince with all of this golden light falling on him. And then he turns their demo tape off, and then we hear him playing Purple Rain on piano. And then we cut to him in the club, and the camera is kind of like drifting a little bit. It's a truly beautiful moment. And
it's also so
I find
awesome
it so
to
moving.
fictionally write your bandmates as the geniuses behind Purple Rain when you're the person who wrote Purple Rain.
Like,
that's so awesome.
Right, because Wendy and Lisa did not write Purple Rain. They helped they helped get the song into a finished form, but they didn't actually write the song. So like it was a collaborative thing, but like Prince obviously came to it first. You want to know something interesting about the suicide that happens and the attempted suicide that happens prior to this moment? We could have had a completely different movie. In the original script, Prince's father attempts suicide and he kills himself, but it happens after he killed his wife. Like in the original script, it was going to be a murder suicide, like, and that's how they were going to present it. And Purple Rain was going to be the last song in the film, and it was going to end with him playing Purple Rain dedicated to his father and end on this kind of like very melancholic note of him like learning to love other people because he lost his whole family basically. Prince wanted it to be this way. Albert Magnoli wanted it to be this way. Warner Brothers would not allow it because they were producing.
I mean, yeah, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they thought they were going to get away with that.
and the primary reason why they didn't get away with
it's like, how about they're in the hospital and you reconcile, okay?
You know,
and we get two funky jams at the end.
Like the ending that we get in Purple Rain is way better. Like it would have completely destroyed the movie if it had went that way. And the only reason why it didn't go forward that way, because Warner Brothers didn't care too much because it was such a cheap movie to begin with, but they were producing Star 80 at the same time, and they didn't want to release two movies with like subject matter that dark. And so because of Star 80, Purple Rain had to be rewritten. And because of that, we get this kind of triumphant moment where we just get like 15 minutes of Prince playing music, and it's the exact right way the movie needs to end.
I will say, because after everything that I was wrestling with, once the Purple Rain and the double encore happens, it was like it wiped my brain, and I was just like, that was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my entire life. So it does do this very hypnotic thing at the end with for you, where regardless of maybe what you were wrestling with, I just think his electric performance and his dancing and the choreography that goes on, the lighting, the stage show, the costumes, everything, like you just get lost in it. It becomes the dream
and how
world.
you have enough of the personal detail of his life that clearly informed some of the personal lyrics of things that he's getting out of his soul too. I think like that's part of it as well, because obviously the songs are just amazing and the concert photography is just amazing and all of it. But I was surprised that like this watching this movie does make the album, like I feel the album even like more than I previously did, especially the live performance that he does there, because from what I heard that he did just perform that right at the club as is, and that was like part of why they were like, okay, well this is going to be, we're gonna try and like mix it this way when we even put it out, because we loved this performance so much.
It's a little bit different than that. A bunch of the songs that are actually on the Purple Rain album are actually live tracks lifted from a concert that he did perform at First Avenue, and then they used the live track in the film where they shot over it and like they're miming over it. So another like really wild thing is like they're not even live in this moment. So like they're actually just like performing as if it was a music video or something, but it feels live because they have,
because it sounds like
it sounds live. and they're hitting their marks perfectly.
That's kind of cool. I kind of like that. Again, it feels like he's restaging the dream fantasy version of what was a raw live performance. That's cool.
Yeah, Thorin said about this, filming Prince was magical, beautiful. He's extremely easy to watch because he makes everything look so spontaneous on stage. Working with him was a dream. Like, you know, and that comes through in all of the great musical performances, you know. It's funny, like Purple Rain, the song. It's
also busting out the ruffled shirt for the end, and like,
and
so
the guitar that Apollonia gifted him, like all of this stuff, like comes into context here at the end. Funny thing,
like
though,
ejaculating with the guitar.
Exactly. Pauline Kael thought that was very cute. She hated the movie, but she liked that. But
that's a classic Pauline Kael opinion.
That's
awesome.
Pauline Kael's review of Purple Rain.
It's a piece of shit, but this part is incredible.
Genuinely sweet.
It's her review is so funny because she writes about Prince with such care, referring to him as like the Marlene Dietrich of the 80s and being filmed like a beautiful von Sternberg heroine. But then like going on to say like, I find the Purple Rain album meandering. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like God bless her, like her prose is beautiful, but like, you know, like reading her reviews is always a roller coaster.
They're like, Prince is magnetic and hypnotizing. You're like, yes, go on. She's like, yeah, but When Doves Cry sucks shit. Yeah.
Garbage album.
She basically said that. She thought that the lyrics were blunt and idiotic. Like she thought that the song was talking down to the audience who couldn't understand the plot of the film. It's just like, okay. Like,
oh man,
that's funny.
That's amazing.
It's true.
Which is funny because functionally that's how that song was written. I guess you could say, but
you're not wrong.
but the
like,
song
did
transcends
you have to say it that way? Like,
yeah, I don't like your tone.
Yeah, God. When he it's getting just to the final performance, that bit when he gets to those big like oohs in Purple Rain, they hit so hard, and the just how many different ways he finds to like just sing like those two words, and the way the crowd is like responding and waving their arms and all this. And I do find it funny, the cutaway shots to the club owner and to Morris, and they're like, maybe this guy's got a future. Maybe this kid's got it.
I think he's got it. Yeah. We've got the next record deal, baby.
I think the funniest moment in the entire movie is like directly after he plays Purple Rain, and then he runs backstage and everyone is like congratulating him and clapping and everything, and then we hear someone in the background say, "That was all right, man." It's like
pretty good, man.
Not bad. I like that song. What's it called?
Not bad.
Yeah.
I also find it funny that dramatically he runs to the back of the venue to get on the motorcycle to drive away because he's, got this personal part of himself out there. He's put it out into the world. He's expressed it. He's collaborated with his band. He's cathartically released something that's, hopefully going to change the way he has relationships with these people moving forward. And then he comes back out to be like, but I'm not done. Baby, I'm a star.
Yeah.
I was like, that is such a funny way to be, again, just calling your shot, but also nailing your shot and being like, what are you going to disagree? And he's a star.
There's so many parts in these songs, specifically, I think it's Baby, I'm a Star, where you think the song is about to end. They even do a couple parts where all the lights go out only for a split second, and you think, okay, this is it. And then he just comes back, does another breakdown, does another dance number. It's like, it's just so, and it's so good. Again, it never becomes, annoying or tedious or anything like that. If anything, you're just like, can this go for another hour, please? I've never experienced this kind of energy. So yeah, it's, I mean, as a musician and as a performer and as an artist, I mean, it's undeniable that he's a genius.
Yeah, and you get that freeze frame of him turning towards the camera
Blue
with the
steel.
pink purple lighting behind him. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's such a star-making moment, and I think that it's really interesting too, because I think that like after Purple Rain and with the MTV and channels like Much Music and stuff, we start thinking of the idea of the movie star differently. There were certainly movies prior to this that starred musicians, particularly like Elvis was like a big deal actor in his time and everything. But I think in the 1980s we get this new kind of way of thinking about like screen stardom, and I think this circles around people like Prince and Madonna and David Bowie specifically. And I think that Prince was very cognizant of that, and that's why he wanted a movie made. And I think that particularly with Purple Rain and with this kind of very triumphant closure, I think that it's also really interesting within the context of like how Black musicians have been presented on screen prior to this moment, where they kind of never had like a film granted to them that was like kind of as loving and lavish and beautiful as Purple Rain, where like you kind of had these movies like The Wiz and Thank God It's Friday and the Isaac Hayes pictures that were all like very good, but they were kind of segregated to a certain audience. And I do think that with Purple Rain, we do kind of see this kind of opening up of the movie kind of crossing over in a way that is actually like kind of politically interesting to me.
Hey, there's a world where the Truck Turner soundtrack has just as many streams as Purple Rain, and it's a great world.
I love Truck Turner. Like the Truck Turner.
So fucking
Truck
good.
Turner is so much fun.
As soon as you said Isaac Hayes, I just wanted to throw that bomb into the mix, but otherwise, yes, completely agree. I totally, and obviously Purple Rain is a much bigger movie and soundtrack.
Yeah.
So totally fair. But yeah, I mean, if we're pivoting towards reductive rating, and I think on Purple Rain here, I have such a good time with this movie. I understand why people take issue with it. But I can't give it anything less than a 4. It's how much I enjoy it. Again, there's parts of me that totally registers that you could be like the parts of it that are like angsty and campy as a romance melodrama, the parts of it that are awkward or hokey in terms of how it is being like again, such a sentimental, self-mythologizing drama. There's parts of me that go, yeah, that doesn't work. His bit of acting in that moment didn't work. Apollonia, the way that she's written, not fantastic. And yet every single time I get to these same dramatic ideas being expressed through the songs and through the performance, and even just his vocal performance and the lyrics and, all of the stuff informing that, I just get completely swept up by it. Again, everything that's silly or simple about it just feels suddenly weird and personal, and you feel like you're living in, as Jamie highlighted, like this vibrant and magical like music video, like fantasy afterworld, which is, I think, a cool way of him, how he announces it at the very beginning of the movie, that's kind of what it feels like he has his dream of the world is, or what we're entering with him. And the fact that, again, someone who hadn't had a number one hit yet, didn't know that they were going to be making, or maybe somehow he just did, their most popular and acclaimed album that they would make, and to have the confidence to go to a studio and say, I'm not doing this unless I get a starring role in a movie that ties in with it, and for it to be huge, and for the album to be so much bigger than the movie, but the movie too still expressively intermingle with it, because he's putting so much personality and so much personal history, some of it unpleasant and some of it dark and some of it probably nonsensical to people. And I just so respect that about him, and the fact that we have this document of who he was and what he wanted to put on screen. And to someone to be, as I think Willow, you highlighted, to be such an obvious genius at one thing and be so limited in some of his other artistic qualities that he tries to put here, just makes the movie more revealing and more personal and more unique. And I just, I find it just a completely expressive outpouring of so much of his feelings about love and freedom and the sex and just so much stuff happening here. And obviously, I mean, I saw someone else mention this in their review, I forget who, but like the songs are so good that you could have put them in any movie and I think you would be like, that's a good movie. And it just so happens that there's also other stuff in here that totally works and is totally him that I have a great time with this. So 4 for me.
I think right now I'm at the strong 3 point. I'm still wrestling with a few things, but that being said,
what you just heard is all of the Prince fans' thumbs are going
That's
down.
right.
They're booing Jamie off the neon lit stage.
That's right. But I will say, I think I might just need another go at it because it definitely wasn't what I was expecting. It did deliver on the expectations of just how unbelievably good looking it is. The music is fantastic. I think this captures his like aesthetic and mood perfectly in that sense. And I mean, there's undeniable charisma and style and the confidence, regardless of certain things that might work or won't. Like it's obvious that he's the type of person that is not afraid to fail whatsoever. And he just takes so many chances, and I have nothing but respect for an artist that can do that. And when it comes to if you even want to call this a biopic, whatever it is, like if it's just trying to capture the kind of the essence of an artist, I think this is the way to do it, rather than just making it, this boring by numbers kind of thing explaining his life. This is far more interesting, and I think you actually do get more. It's more vulnerable than I think just doing something very standard. And I do also think like this is a movie that could have much probably like Prince's general style and music, that where it's like the 80s feels very much like where this could have been made. It just dead center in the middle of it, 84. It's just like, even like you were saying, Willow, kind of these almost personalities could be stars at this time. Like I was even thinking, aside from musicians, but even like Arnold Schwarzenegger, it seems like he would even be someone that would only be able to be a star in that time, because it's almost like they were looking for personalities and these larger than life characters. And with Prince, you have that, like with his thousands of different shoes that he owned. I think it was something like, I think I heard that he almost never like repeated an outfit. He had these like, just constant fashion designers working on things for him and everything. And it's just, it feels like no one would be able to copy him. And so to put him on screen and to realize it in this way is very cool. So yeah, I probably just need another go at it. But I will say, in those last 20 minutes when they hit Purple Rain and then go into the double encore, I forgot about all of my problems that I had with the film in those last 15 minutes, and I was about to 5 the damn thing. So it's undeniable that he was just a pure genius.
I do love that it's bookended by the concert performances at the club, the same way Streets of Fire is. So yeah, it connects those movies so much for me. But totally. For you, Willow?
So it would be like dishonest of me as a person to give this anything other than a 5, because I think that I have such a like my first memory is literally attached to Prince. The first thing I remember is the Diamonds and Pearls music video and him lifting the jewelry above his head. That's literally my first memory. I don't want to get into everything, but Prince has always been threaded around my life for as long as I can remember. And I've seen Purple Rain probably more than any other movie. It's not the best movie that I've ever seen, but I do think that me loving Purple Rain has something to do with the fact that I think The Red Shoes is the greatest movie ever made. I think that it kind of taught me about what kind of aesthetic things that I was looking for in movies and what I wanted out of a star and what I wanted out of music. And I think that if I gave this anything less than a 5, it would be like me giving my life less than a 5. And I don't, and I don't want to do that. And Sofia Coppola put Purple Rain on her Sight and Sound list, and that's good enough for me.
Amazing.
Hell yeah.
I will give it a 5 out of 5. And, we can talk about Under the Cherry Moon and if it's a 5 out of 5 in our next section.
No, that's a great segue. I'm excited to do that. That's going to wrap it up here for Purple Rain. We're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about Prince leaning away from some of that concert musical aspect and leaning more into the story and the comedy and the melodrama. So let's do that with Under the Cherry Moon.
Under the Cherry Moon.
All right, we are back, and we are talking Under the Cherry Moon, the 1986 quasi-con artist romantic comedy sort of musical directed by
a lot of
Prince,
things again.
written by Becky Johnston and starring once again Prince, this time alongside another The Time bandmate and also Purple Rain co-star Jerome Benton as a struggling musicians, Tricky and Christopher, who turn to con artistry to pay their French Riviera bills and also some debts they owe back in Miami, until Tricky suggests that they romance the beautiful heiress, Mary Sharon, played by Kristen Scott Thomas in her debut performance, who, of course, Christopher, in classic con artist or hustler romance movie fashion, breaks the number one rule, and he falls in love with his mark. Following the record success of Purple Rain, Under the Cherry Moon is one of your classic blank check follow-ups. The studio was like, it's Prince. Look at the box office numbers, look at the album, do it again, go do whatever you want. That's my guess. I don't know how else to explain this. Willow probably knows the history more concretely than that. But Willow, what is the explanation behind Under the Cherry Moon? And I use that term more endearingly than people who otherwise might refer to this film, because we'll get into it. This was considered one of the worst films of 1986. It won a bunch of Razzies, including for Kristen Scott Thomas's performance.
Up there
and
with Howard
also,
the Duck, baby.
Yep, and it famously got the double thumbs down, Siskel and Ebert. Like, at the time that this came out, it was one of the most reviled films of the 80s, which you watch it now and you're kind of like, that feels mean. Like, I don't really it's you know, even if you don't think it works and you don't like parts of it, it doesn't deserve that reaction. I don't think.
Not even really close. It also feels like it could have been misunderstood in some way. Like, sometimes I feel like people didn't understand the satirical elements.
Please do.
Because it feels more like satirical than anything else a lot of the time.
Yeah, so the story with Under the Cherry Moon is that Prince had a strong interest in continuing to make movies because he was a cinephile. We don't talk about this aspect of Prince's history very often because you wonder, like, you know, how is it that someone who recorded as many albums and songs as he did had time to watch movies? But he had very particular tastes, and according to Jill Jones, he loved a lot of classic Hollywood and European cinema, which is where Under the Cherry Moon's aesthetic interests stem from. He really loved Lena Wertmüller's movies in the 70s, which is really interesting. And Cary Grant was famously someone that he really adored as an actor. And I think with Under the...
I was like, Wertmüller, we've talked about her. That's the Seven Beauties director, right? That's such a crazy director to imagine Prince. That would have been a crazy collab too. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Continue.
He really loved Swept Away in particular, and a lot of people think that was the primary reason for him wanting to do Under the Cherry Moon. But Under the Cherry Moon, the reason why it is kind of such a different beast than Purple Rain is because during the middle of the tour for Purple Rain, Prince decided to end it abruptly and not tour the Purple Rain show overseas because he was growing bored and stagnant and didn't want to be the kind of artist who just went out and cosplayed the movie, which is what he felt like he was beginning to do. And Prince is famously a very restless artist who is always looking to change his sound. So in 1985, like a couple of weeks after the Purple Rain tour is canceled, he releases Around the World in a Day, which is nowhere near as popular as Purple Rain, but it's a great album. And it has kind of a psychedelic 60s kind of sound to it, which a lot of people compared it to like Sgt. Pepper at the time. And you can hear that in the album, even though Prince famously said of the Beatles, yeah, they did some good stuff for their time, which, you know, classic.
He was just shooting all the time.
He was, but like, you know, like in the 80s, he could back up the ego. And so Under the Cherry Moon happens, and initially he was not going to direct this movie. He was just going to star in it again. Initially he wanted Jean-Baptiste, God, what is his name? Hold on just a second. Initially, he wanted Jean-Baptiste Mondino to direct it, and he had done a lot of cinematography for music videos. He had directed Don Henley's Boys of Summer video, but that didn't work out. Then Mary Lambert...
And the studio wanted Scorsese at one point, right?
Yeah, and that didn't work out either. Mary Lambert takes over...
Scorsese directing this would have been fucking crazy.
Yeah, like what
it would have also backed up the encyclopedic knowledge of the old Hollywood stuff too. Yeah. It actually probably would have really benefited from Scorsese's touch on it.
I mean, any movie would, but
yes, of course.
So Mary Lambert takes over and is going to direct it. And she at the time was famous for directing a lot of Madonna's music videos. Madonna was offered Kristen Scott Thomas's role, which is a crazy thing to think about, like the two of them starring in a movie together in 1986. Wow. Madonna turns it down, but Prince does end up working with Madonna for her Like a Prayer album. If you are familiar with that chunky guitar that opens up the song Like a Prayer, that's Prince.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. So Prince ends up taking over shooting the film a couple of weeks into production, and
super against the Directors Guild of America rules, which we've had to talk about on the show before because of Eastwood taking over Josie Wales' production. The reason that rule exists, they were like, actors cannot fire their director and then assume directing. It's like super illegal.
I think that we broke new ground on this podcast by saying Prince and Clint Eastwood are like each other in this way, and I think that's the first time that phrase has ever been uttered.
That's why people listen to this show. Let's go.
So yeah,
they're the same. But from what I understand, Mary Lambert also left on like not like horrible terms. I think she kind of just went, look, you have a very specific vision that like I'm, you know, not. I don't think I'm necessarily the person for. So you seem like you have a strong enough command of your set. Like, why don't you just like direct this, you know, thing yourself? And then she went on to go and do what was the Pet Sematary? That was what we talked about her last time we talked about her.
She's a good director. She would have probably done a totally fine job with this, but but it's interesting as a Prince movie because I think that it exposes a lot of his anxieties and his quirks, and I think that not a lot of this movie works in a conventional sense, but it works in kind of a context if you think about it as exclusively like an expression of everything that Prince is. And because I think that this movie is closer to who Prince is than Purple Rain is. And I think that he made a lot of deliberate choices with this in order to cut off his star power. Like he didn't want the same path that Michael Jackson had. Like he was growing fed up with the kind of having the cameras on him all the time and always asking to interview him because he was kind of a private person, despite you know the fact that he wanted to be a movie star. You know, like he's always driven by these contradictions, and so because of that, there's.
Can I ask Willow? How did Becky Johnston get involved in this? Does anyone know that story? Because she's like an underground no wave filmmaker, and I was so surprised to see that she like wrote the script for this movie.
I am not 100% sure. We should probably ask like Elizabeth Purchell, because like I think she would have that kind of information, because on Letterboxd she said this is like the most expensive no wave film ever made.
That's just it's such a weird, and it's her first script. So I was just like, that's like, or at least feature like narrative, and I was like, that is so interesting that he just, I don't know, in terms of choosing collaborators, he seemed like he really did have like just interesting taste. Like the fact that he was like, look, I'm going to get a different cinematographer for this film. It's going to be Michael Bauhaus, who had just shot After Hours for Scorsese and obviously had a long history of shooting Fassbinder films, talking about the European art film connection. And then production designer, he grabs Richard Silbert, who had production designed The Graduate and fucking Chinatown and The Cotton Club for Francis Ford Coppola. So talk about a movie being like just like lavish and gorgeous and shot in black and white and like so many things, which I think unfortunately is part of what contributed to the factor of people who were misinterpreting the film. Is like people looked at it and they went, well, Prince is hiring these like unbelievable artists because he has like this pretentious taste and he thinks that he's making like this, you know, really heady artistic European art film because of look at the people he's hired to like on a technical level make this movie with him. And then you get Prince actually performing in the movie and it's a lot more playful and it's a lot more silly and it's a lot more like juvenile in terms of some of the sense of humor. Like some of the way that he performs his character and he has his character written is like, it feels like a weird like postmodern joke, but playing it on these like genres he clearly does actually love and does want, and he would be offended if they weren't like done well. Like it's not a spoof movie, but it is something where he is having more silly fun with this than the people who seem to hate him for this and think that he was making, like, I think one of the reviews from Siskel and Ebert was like, how am I supposed to take this seriously? And I think that they were looking at it on a technical level and I was going, and so on that, I get that, I guess, a little bit, but then I was like, the actual tone of this movie and what Prince is doing in it as a star, like he's having fun. It's practically like just a ridiculous screwball movie where he's playing an American gigolo having a vacation in France and trying to get this, like, as he views it, this kind of like stuffy rich daddy's girl to kind of open up and be part of the fun as well. I mean, one of the best sequences in the film is him literally singing Boys and Girls, or Girls and Boys. I actually can't remember which way it's supposed to. Girls and Boys. I knew I got it wrong the first time I said it. And the way that he just gets all of these like stuffy rich people in the, you know, Art Deco design and in the crazy outfits to dance along and sing to like one of his songs, which has a more modern energy to it. And I think that to me spoke to like what this movie's actually trying to do.
You know, Siskel and Ebert criticized it by saying like how am I supposed to take this seriously? But if you do want to take it seriously, you can view it as a deconstruction as languages in cinema that were usually upholding whiteness and class, and the way that Prince is kind of infiltrating them and forcing them to change into his mode of expression. And I think that a great moment that exemplifies that is that Girls and Boys scene where he kind of like brings them all to the dance floor, and there's this kind of unification between classes and races that I think Prince was always interested in. But I think it's also like kind of him deconstructing the screwball comedy too, because there's the great scene in this film of he and Tricky, Jerome Benton's character, sitting down with Kristen Scott Thomas's character and doing kind of a vaudeville bit with her and getting her to say "recasto," and just like and her not knowing what that means, and then they're like, okay, say it again, say it slower, and then it dawns on her that she's actually saying something that she said a long time. And I think it's very important that in order to get her to understand, he says like if I want to buy the new Sam Cooke album, I go to, and then she begrudgingly says the Recasto, and you know it's a good bit. It's really funny, but it's also a commentary on the way that these movies like function through a different lens that Prince brought to it. And I think that, you know, you can have your fun with Under the Cherry Moon, but I think it's also kind of slyly subversive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find even the way that he opens up with his performance feels kind of satirical and even more over the top of certain things that he does in Purple Rain. Like there's one part where he sees a woman that he's attracted to as he's playing piano, and he kind of like bites his hand, and it just feels so much more like a very conscious physical thing to do to kind of elicit like some type of playfulness. and at the same time just show you what kind of performance I think we're going to be in store for, which is more in line with a screwball sex comedy.
It's
because
the Cary Grant thing. It's arsenic and old lace.
And like even the way they react in the restaurant when she says Rekka store, like they all start to absolutely howl and like smack their hands on the table and everything, kind of disrupting the whole politeness of the environment. And it just feels like he's kind of he's going a little bit more over the top, both in style and in performance. And when I say style, I just mean like, I guess I found much more tracking shots and much more interesting shots of like, it's almost a little bit off kilter. Like there's one where they do a 360 degree spin through the restaurant. Shot. And it's awesome. And it's just stuff that I didn't really anticipate seeing when Prince was directing, because I just didn't know what kind of ideas he would be bringing behind the camera. And it was cool to see those things. He does a lot of exaggerated like zoom ins on his face, and he's kind of contorting his eyebrows and stuff at times too.
Moments that are now immortalized in GIFs, like. You know, people don't watch this movie, but they're familiar with the GIFs of like Prince like posing a certain way or reacting a certain way. Like he has this kind of I don't want to say silent
the
film
faces
energy.
He makes in that opening shot fantastic. When it's like once upon a time in France, there lived a bad boy named Christopher Tracy, and he's just at the piano as the sort of male gigolo con artist. And, you know, they're talking about how, you know, there wasn't a woman in any shape, size, or color, that, you know, they all just came, they were all rich, and, you know, until one of them fixes his heart or whatever. And they're giving that over top of him doing the most performatively like sexy like glances. And like just like
so good. And then the playfulness goes even to his friend is it Tricky?
Tricky.
I believe.
Tricky.
And like there's a shot that I absolutely love that purely feels like satirical and very playful, is when he's just taking a bath and he's still in his like cool ass hat and his
it's like
buddy
a Zorro
Tricky
hat
is right,
or something. It's so funny. And
he's
taking
Tricky
a bubble
is
bath
right next to him, and they're just having a casual conversation. You know, it kind of felt like, I always bring this up every time it pops up, but the what's that the cop movie where it's like live like a man, die like a cop or something
live
that.
Like a cop, die like a man.
One. It just reminds me of that when those two
the homoerotic roommate cops who are the most fascist evil guys on the planet, but like clearly they're in love with each other. You get the same energy out of just even the chemistry between the two of them, like the way that Jerome says make the Bela Lugosi eyes, and they establish that weird sort of like menage a trois kind of relationship they have with their French landlady.
Like they say we need to get married, as in like the three of them. Like there's this kind of like polyamorous homoerotic thing going on with like Prince and Tricky and Kristen Scott Thomas's character that I think is like very like palpably queer. I think it's directed in kind of.
I saw someone call Prince the gayest straight artist to ever live or something. I was like,
it's so
you
true.
know, there's something to that.
And you know, you know, and this goes back even to Purple Rain. Like they're one scene together, or they have a couple scenes in Purple Rain, but like there's one moment in Purple Rain when Jerome Benton like approaches Prince right before he goes up on stage, and he like fixes his collar, and he like smacks his lip, and he says sexy. Like that's just the dynamic that they have with each other. It's very flirtatious. There was an article in Hazlitt that was published shortly after Prince died that explained their relationship. I forget who wrote it, but they said it was like very similar to an idea in Jean Genet's Our Lady of the Flowers, like specifically the sentence, they spent their time doing nothing and they let their intimacy fuse them. And I think that that's so emblematic of their relationship in this movie, because like you mentioned the bathtub scene, and like Tricky's just like dropping rose petals in the tub for him, like you know, like
while plotting like which women they're gonna rob next so that they can sustain this lifestyle, right? Like like the women are not of interest to them outside of like, how do we sustain this like awesome bromance we have going on, and like how do we, you know, it's a business thing, but they both clearly enjoy it, and like it is their personal relationship as well. And part of the betrayal of the movie is that he actually falls in love with a woman, and that actually genuinely like upsets Tricky. He's like, that's, you can't do that. You can't, even though, you know, he sees that, you know, this he's actually falling in love with this person, that's still like, you know, it's completely against the rules, even though there is a fantastic line at one point in the movie where he says, I think it's something along the lines of like, I don't do anything like that's professional. I just have fun or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is. And that to me also screams some of what Prince's personality is going into this movie. Like it's so much of it is in the name of fun, even if he very clearly has very professional technicians handsomely putting this thing together for him.
I think that connects to his confidence too, right? It's like being able to say like, okay, I've got my second chance at making a film. I'm a cinephile. I love the art form. I've got all these people that are unbunbelievably talented.
And what deep cut references? Who else would have expected Prince to be doing like Gold Diggers of 1933 or like, you know? Yeah, like what?
And he's like, and instead too,
the Bela Lugosi line,
and instead I'm going to use like the people that I have for this creative endeavor to make something that is more satirical and very, in a sense, like lighthearted and funny, and it's just, again, very unique and still flamboyant too. Like I love that it still has the style of these films that he's referencing, but then he doesn't stray away from any of what Prince would look like. Like he still dresses as Prince in this, and to watch the kind of black and white photography and
the
him
glittery
being
crop tops and all,
and he's still dressed like that. Like he like he's in the 80s and everyone else is in like the 30s or something like that.
Like the movie's so anachronistic. Like I'm not even sure like when the movie takes place. It could pass for the 30s, it could pass for the 80s, it could pass for the 50s. And like Prince has a very laissez-faire attitude towards all of it. He's like, okay, we can have a boombox in this scene, that's fine. And you know, like he's and even his references are kind of all over the place.
The airport stuff looks all Casablanca.
Exactly.
The parts where they're driving and the parts where they're doing the drag race look like Rebel Without a Cause.
You were just mentioning the stereo system.
There's a part that looks like Breathless at one point, right? Like there's no decade that's off limits to him here.
And you were just mentioning the stereo system. Even that, like she's in one of those much larger kind of like, you know, those beds that you'd see in like an old Victorian drama or something like that. But then beside her is this clear stereo system that looks like it's out of a science fiction film from the 50s or something, you know. It is really mixed together, and that was something I found constantly engaging, was just watching how he kind of set up a set, or what kind of costuming was going to be mixed together, how people even act is kind of in that sense, like the way that Kristen Scott Thomas
I was gonna say shout out Kristen Scott Thomas, because she got shit on for this movie, and everyone who gave her like shit for this looks like an idiot after the fact, because obviously she went on to become an incredibly successful and fantastic actress, and I think they were just prepared to be like, well, this is her first movie and she's in a very tonally, you know, strange movie, and like that's why maybe people didn't really get it. And you know, she's obviously going up against Prince, who has a very different a unique acting style, we'll call it. And so like it's not an easy thing to ask of a first-time actress, and I actually think for the most part she completely carries her own. She totally gets into this like rich girl, like screwball, but also kind of like playfully bitter and like hates him, but then kind of has fun with him. And like I think she like does a pretty good job being this character who, you know, like you compare her especially to Apollonia, and she's a much more interesting character, both in terms of how she's written and performed.
They have more chemistry than Prince and Apollonia do in Purple Rain, which is so funny because, you know, Purple Rain is like presented as like this as like the Prince film or whatever, but like there are aspects of Under the Cherry Moon that are stronger than Purple Rain, I think, and that's one aspect that I do think is has more weight to it. And I think that also helps that Kristen Scott Thomas is better written than Apollonia's character.
Yeah.
Like, she has more agency in this movie. Like, she has the ability.
Definitely.
Her introduction of going up to her own
Just
birthday
in her
party
birthday
and
suit.
just showing off her birthday
Yeah.
suit, but then immediately going to her own party band and hitting the fucking drums.
Come on. And kind
So
of doing like a
sick.
somewhat hip hop inspired track and everything.
It's
and
like
then,
the funky
that's
drummer.
also- yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a interesting way of introducing, especially her character, which is coming from a much more, rich society
Mm-hmm.
and everything. And so it was
She's coming
love
from
that.
a repressed
Yeah.
household, but she's immediately introduced as like someone who wants to break free and
Yeah.
has a bit of a free spirit. And then when she locks eyes with Prince, it's like the destiny moment of like
Mm-hmm.
these two, there's a magnetic pull of attraction here. But even complicated though is she immediately recognizes him as at her party as a party crasher who is a diamond hunter, as she calls it, hustler, who's working all the rich ladies at her party trying to get a leg up, which is like a classic twist on like the sort of like penniless hustler you would see in like an old noir movie or like an old sort of like class centric screwball as well, right?
Yeah.
And so that I find interesting is there's actually a sort of thorny dynamic between these two when they're first introduced to each other, and then slowly they actually realize that they actually have fun together and they could be liberated with each other.
Yeah, and I think that this movie is also like less broad than Purple Rain is in a weird kind of way, because I think that even that scene that you mentioned of her being like, this is my birthday suit, and then she goes and plays the drum, it tells us without telling us that she also wants to cause a rupture and a change in the class dynamic that she's been raised in. Like, she has similar ideas as Prince's character, she's just coming from it from a different angle. And I think that kind of teaches the viewer to expect these two to tangle with one another and be right for one another, and whether or not the romance is effective is like another thing we could talk about, but like
Yeah.
they try.
That's a little
falls
just
into-
on Prince's ability to make it seem like he's not interested in just like the having sex with the entire world, or more so with his business partner. Than he does have slightly better chemistry with Jerome than he does with Kristen Scott Thomas, but that is
Definitely.
more speaking of what he's bringing to that relationship rather than what she's bringing. I think she's bringing a lot to that dynamic.
Yeah, I find the way that he kind of talks to her and the way that he flirts, it works for me, I think, in the first half, because it's kind of the lead up to both her being intrigued by him and him trying to entice her so he can get the money, but then
Him antagonizing her out of her habits or her lifestyle, right? Like that big line he has at the party where he's like, maybe if you took your chastity belt off, you might breathe more better.
yeah.
And she
I
gets
do
so
like
offended by that she has to like practice all night a comeback at him the next day.
Yeah.
And then she goes to him and confronts him, and then he says, "You were practicing that all night, weren't you?"
Yeah. And I do like that she has this more like long-winded way of doing it while she's practicing herself. Her thing is very like, just the way she puts the words together, it's way too many, and it feels way too detailed for a comeback, for anything that would actually be effective. And I did like that aspect of it. It's like she can't completely get rid of what she was kind of born into and grew up on. But that being said, the second half is when you are supposed to start to kind of get into them actually falling in love. That's when I found myself a little bit still stepping back, because there's something about the way they write Prince flirting in both of these movies that I find to be just like honestly annoying, and I'm kind of like, and I know he's not. If there's this amazing clip of where he's on this like this talk show with, I think her name's Maria Bartiromo, and all she's doing is trying to get him to play a song for her, and the way that he interacts is just like, it's like you can make anybody melt the way you talk. And so I know that that's not necessarily the style, and he's known as this sex symbol and this charismatic man and everything. It's just whatever dialogue he's been getting in these two movies, eventually I get so,
which you can tell though is also
strained from.
his sense of humor. Like for some
Sure,
reason
absolutely.
he
There's
does
moments-
think like that's
yeah.
like there. That's what I also think turns turn some people off is just some of the
screwball sex comedy aspect of it sometimes.
Well, if there's some broadness to it, it's maybe just in some of the jokes and lines that they have for each other, even though I think a lot of it is quite funny. Although one of my favorites was that totally random gag that comes out of nowhere where they're eating at a restaurant and just there's a bunch of bats. And they literally just run from the bats, and it feels like it breaks the fabric of the movie for like 2 seconds that there was bats in the restaurant.
And it even goes like, it's even exaggerated in the sense of almost birds for 2 seconds, because the amount of extras that they get just running out of the restaurant and panicking is genuinely hilarious and has a lot of energy to it. And then it just disappears. It's just a one-off gag. And I thought that was hilarious as well.
I kind of think that with this movie, Prince kind of felt that this film was going to like destroy his entire film career, so he thought to do everything possible, because it was so different than Purple Rain, and he knew that people were not going to be happy about that, and the critics weren't happy about it, and the audience wasn't happy about it, and they were like, where's all the music scenes in this? Like, why isn't this in color? Like, he took
what's going on?
It's like he took every single
he made like the opposite. How antagonizing can you be towards the people who just bought a ticket to watch your movie 2 years ago, and he made that choice.
So because it's like, because he took out every single thing that people liked about Purple Rain and only focused on the things that people criticized, I think that the film was doomed to fail. But I think looking at it in a more modern context, away from the moment and away from the Purple Rainness, the shadow of it all, I think it's actually like this really subversive and funny and coherent object. Like on Letterboxd, I called it like an unholy combination of Fellini and Ed Wood, and I like this movie in the same way that I like an Ed Wood movie, because I can pinpoint that maybe like it's not objectively like incredible or whatever, but like I'm always fascinated by like whatever Prince is deciding to do as an artist. And I think with that fascination, I think that there is a lot of interesting things about him as an artist that come up, and a lot of his anxieties of his place within an industry that didn't know what to do with him. And I think that this movie is very, very revealing. And I think that this movie is also very, very decadent and extravagant. So he's trying to do everything. So you mentioned that like the screwball element, like you don't like it as much when it becomes a more traditional romance down the backstretch. And the thing to remember about screwballs is like, the screwballs always held off on romance until like the very last second, but Prince doesn't do that here. He like also wants to do like the Douglas Sirk thing, and it's
that's the thing. He really tries to pivot at a certain point to more of like a tragic, like young lovers on the run, like kind of thing, and definitely more of like, I mean, Cale once compared him to James Dean in that way, and I feel like you can get a little bit of a feel of that's what he's aiming for down the stretch, where my character gets to have like this tragic death in a moment of just like pure love for this person. And I do think that some of the subversiveness and the comedy of the first half of it means that it's harder to sell that depth of emotion that he's trying to get out of you by the time you get there, even though I still have fun with a lot of those scenes. And I think some of those scenes in terms of how they're shot are still like incredible. Like that entire sequence of them drag racing in the cars that he makes her, that they go on like the shopping spree with her, because she ends up becoming actually interested in breaking her dad's rules and not being part of this arranged marriage that her dad Isaac has set up for her, who I forget what the actor's name is, Stephen Burkoff.
Oh, do you know that Terrence Stamp was supposed to play that role, and then after
I did read that,
after like a week he quit and was like, this was not the movie I thought it was going to be.
Damn. Well, shout out Stephen Burkoff from Clockwork Orange and Beverly Hills Cop, who stepped right in and actually plays a pretty stern dad pretty well, I thought, in the few moments he gets.
It's fascinating though, because I think that like Prince kind of projects a very similar kind of sexuality that he did in Teorema. I think imagining Prince in that role seducing everyone, like, imagine like Pasolini working with Prince. Like that would be
my God.
There's also these scenes that kind of get mixed up with like the romantic aspect and then the stuff that I guess maybe I was having more trouble with, which was like the airport scene, for instance, which I love the energy of it. Like he's in the convertible. They have this awesome shot of him taking his cross and like kissing it before he crashes through the gate, and then he crashes through it. And it's kind of this like big romantic moment of, you know, she's about to leave to New York and you're going to woo her off of her feet for the last time.
Yeah,
and
he starts hitting the really conventional beats of like, oh, you know, Tricky ended up showing up and revealing to her that this was, you know, always a business plan, and we were trying to hustle her the whole time, and she gets really offended, so he has to chase her down at the airport to stop her from running away, and then they have to go on the run from the dad who's like, I don't sanction this relationship, and you know, it's like it's hitting very specific, like very Hollywood beats at a certain point, and yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and then the stuff though that it's not even necessarily the conventional stuff, because that stuff I know he's kind of playing with, and he's kind of making a satire in a way, so I can get on board with some of that. It's when they again are going into the more romantic part of it, and it becomes more selfish and about almost what he thinks, what Mary wants, and so he says things like, you know, you're coming with me, you belong to me forever, and she's even resisting at certain parts, and he's kind of in this mindset of like, it feels like he knows better at certain moments than what she is at least saying that she wants. And it could be that thing of like, you know, she's hiding it within herself, but it feels like there's a lot of moments where he's just kind of pulling it forcefully out of her and putting her into positions that she's not asking for. And that's where I get a little bit like, that's what I think where I was referencing before, where I was become annoyed at a certain point with his flirting style.
Yeah, I mean, this one makes a little bit more
really
sense to me, just because he is, you know, or at least the concept of it is he's trying to break her out of, like, as he sees it, like a prison of this like high class lifestyle that she lives. I know what you mean when he's like overconfident about like, I'm going to be your savior to get you out of this, even though he's also, you know, has flaws in his own way and is selfish in his own way.
Or the scene where he's in the convertible with her and she starts saying like she starts explaining how she's feeling, and he just goes into the back seat and stays silent and puts his glasses on, and then she gets incredibly frustrated about that because she's not communicating, and he keeps doing it, and then she goes like, I hate you, and then he starts to go like, well, I love you, and it just feels manipulated.
You don't love me, then I hate you. No, you don't.
If I was watching my friend go through that with a guy, I'd be like, dump his ass. You know what I mean? That. Let me say that. You know, like, so when I'm watching it, I'm like, I get your Prince, bro, but
if you got far enough along where you were watching it, and as they locked lips, Kiss hit the soundtrack of like The World, just like diegetically. That song.
I mean, it's the Purple Rain effect. It's the double encore effect. That's the problem, is that I get so swept up in that afterwards that I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It didn't quite hit me. By that point in the film, I was a little bit more bought in, but the one moment where that hit for me is when he makes the choice to go to the payphone and call her dad and is like, I own your daughter now. And I was a little bit like, okay, hold on.
That was pretty wild. That's a ballsy move, man.
You know, both of the characters that Prince plays in these movies, you know, it would be fair to say that they're controlling and just like abusive and like not like great husband material. But I think the fantasy of Prince is that, you know, you kind of do want to like get swept up in his danger a little bit. And I think that he is so alluring and so attractive and so obviously sexual in a way that's way more giving. Like whenever he is engaged with music, it must be said that like on albums, he's always like, your pleasure is more important than mine. Like he has so many songs where he's giving oral sex to women. There's no other way around to phrase that. Like songs like International Lover on 1999, or a song like, Let's Pretend We're Married, also in 1999, or like Head on Dirty Mind. And it's like, you know, he's prioritizing her orgasm above his. And that was what brought women to him, where I think that like the women who did end up loving Prince and watching these movies understood that, you know, he may be playing this kind of character, but his music says something else. And within that contradiction, you kind of had this kind of really complex figure that, like, I think a lot of people didn't really know what to do with. And I think
I actually think in this it's a little bit more justifiable, only because I think there's something interesting about the contradiction of him playing an old-fashioned old Hollywood leading man who frequently did have macho attitudes that were like not part of a healthy relationship, but seeing them played by Prince in, you know, he's not Humphrey Bogart. He looks very different. He has a very different stature. He dresses entirely different. He has a completely different energy that he radiates. And so I think that's what I think Jamie is also responding to. Is it's like Prince being the one doing these macho sequences. They feel weird. They feel like they shouldn't be, you know, like how it's done. But I do think in this case, as you were already highlighting, I think he is questioning some of these like heteronormative old Hollywood characterizations and styles and stuff, and was trying to play them up a little bit.
I think there is a reason too that his character probably like ends so tragically as well in some sense. And there's also, I think I read it on, maybe it was just the wiki, but he did say something about through this film learning that he can't direct the stuff that he didn't write. And he said something along those lines. And so I feel like there might have been in certain moments a disconnect, because I do have to remember while he's saying this dialogue in both movies, really, he didn't write these movies as far as I know. And I don't know how much he'd be on set that day and be like, here's an idea, and they do it. But it feels like there's a certain level of control he probably didn't have over that, and so he could only do so much. But again, I think that some of it works and some of it doesn't. I just get I struggle with it as like a through line as it goes to the finale, and he's still kind of doing those things. I was having a hard time believing that Mary would truly love him in this way, this like head over heels kind of way. I feel like it would be more, there'd be more butting of heads and it'd be more complicated. Still a love story. I
get that, but I definitely do think it's meant to be like, as sort of Willow was, I think, alluding to a little bit, that it's important that she's a 21-year-old girl who's being given a fantasy of how to leave your rich lifestyle behind. And he's got that little bit of that bad danger, boy, that bad boy in him, you know. Oh, totally. even though it's Prince, so and you're kind of like
back with the glasses, you know, that's swaggy,
a little bit intrinsically like less threatening to me than like, you know, like some of those like more toxic noir characters or something like that. Like there's something, you know, definitely more sensitive to him that feels contradictory with how he's behaving.
Right. Yeah. There also one scene, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to pile it all on at this moment.
Throw it all in, Jamie.
Like the movie, but there is the one part that reminded me of Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh my god!
Oh no, not something you want to be reminded
of. It's that part where, now, granted, I think in the context of this
with
scene,
the mom,
with the mom, where they go up the ladder and it's like a screwball sex comedy from Porky's or something for a minute, and they go in and it's supposed to be like him hooking up with Mary, I believe, but it's dark, so they don't know.
Yeah, because she called them and she says, if you were here, I'd, and then hangs up while she's like, you know, lounging in her bed, and he interprets that as like I'm gonna go straight to her house right now and get a ladder and go up to her bedroom window.
So the difference is that both of them are ignorant to the fact that it's who it is. So that's like, I guess, a little bit more of a, you know, you could let that go a little bit easier. But because with Revenge of the Nerds,
because it sounds like he wouldn't have done it if he had known. But the I understand what you mean. Like the comedy is like Jerome mugging and being like, is he gonna get with the mom without her knowing?
Yeah, you just kind of sexually harassed her mom. Holy shit, that's crazy.
Now, it must be said that like the 80s weren't like a politically correct decade.
Absolutely. We've covered many wild things from the 80s, and it does specifically seem like this decade does it in a way that like it kind of has way more fun with it, rather than the other decades where it pops up. I feel like it wrestles with it a little bit harder. This decade feels as if it's making jokes about it constantly, and maybe that was a way to deal with it. But
there's that scene in Purple Rain where like Morris Day and Jerome Benton like actually take a woman and like drop her in a dumpster.
It's a dumpster,
Like,
right?
I almost forgot
Crazy,
about that.
But, you know,
crazy stuff.
As much as I love these movies, there's like an elephant in the room here that's like
Yeah.
brushes up against my gender identity, and I'm like, I don't know about that particular scene or whatever. And it's you know, this is all to say that I think all of your points are like totally valid.
Sure, yeah, it does. And I will say, I did like it. It's like it does result in Isaac and the mother making love for what it sounds like the first time in a long time. So maybe it
if anything, he kind of helps that relationship out a bit by accident.
You know, it worked out in the end. But yeah, there were certain moments that were reminding me of those kinds of movies in the bad way. But
that's where the broad humor is coming in, because I do think
some
that
of it works really
Prince
well,
had a bit of a childish attitude in him about that kind of stuff, and sometimes it ends up with like a childish glee and energy, and it's very positive, and then sometimes you're like, I don't know if that joke landed.
yeah, exactly. But that is, again, that's kind of part of the charm of watching these movies, and I've kind of learned to.
I keep reverting back to Chris's point that if it was any less messy, it would be less him.
Yes, yeah, that's what it feels like. Because it's like, again, with his lyrics, they're very raw, so it feels like just displaying it all on screen is something that he would do, regardless of whether it's taboo or whatever. So it's just that those few moments I found to be more troublesome than I was able to just kind of laugh it off. But
I definitely like that a little bit less than I like, the extended montage of her inviting them to the restaurant and showing them seeing how they adapt to the finer side of life, and then them actually completely disrupting it with, again, girls and boys, and almost doing like the Footloose thing of getting everyone else, getting all the prudes to get up off their feet, and they're like, maybe they're not loud and obnoxious, maybe they're just fun, and that starts being, when they're trying to convert her that way, it has a lot more of like a wholesomeness and like I think a thematic cutting that Willow was referring to, where they're disrupting these old handsome Hollywood styles and being like, Prince is going to throw his own weird postmodern energy into it and see if we can get everyone moving and grooving.
There was this one part that I really liked too, and it just kind of worked with how the production set was and the dance number was lit. But when they're performing, it seems as if there's like a strobe light going on and everyone's dancing and having a good time performing or whatever. And then when Isaac shows up and everything stops, the strobe light keeps going. And there was something about, again,
that
the
push
mix
in on his face too, as he's like staring him down.
And the mix of, again, how this movie's doing a bunch of different eras. They
collapse
really
in on one another.
Yeah, and so when you have the strobe light, which is a very 80s kind of thing, and you have this more like 40s ballroom, it felt it does feel like something that Lynch would do in a sense, but it just feels off. It feels uncanny, and it doesn't feel like it belongs. It's almost nightmarish in a way. It was cool. I really liked it. And again, I don't know how it feels specific. It feels like Prince was coming up with that. But it also coincidentally just works with the dance number that was abruptly ended. So
it's also the one really big like number that's in the movie.
Yes.
So it's definitely something where you, I think, go back and you're like, this is kind of what I wanted a Prince. There's a lot of people who go, he doesn't do enough singing and dancing. That's the be all end all. Not as good of a movie. Yeah. That's all there is to it. And you have to wait a little bit longer.
Besides the piano playing that he does.
Correct.
I mean,
there's.
If you want to count the credits for Mountains, where he does like the music, he sings in heaven.
Which is awesome.
I think
so
like I don't want to like jump the gun or anything, but like I think that like that moment playing over the end credits is like incredible, like as a standalone music video, because they did release it as a music video too. It's like everything that I want out of like Prince, and it's like so tantalizing just to like give that to us at the very, very end of the movie, where like, why couldn't you have done this like an hour ago or whatever? But like his band is there, like the way that they're framed is beautiful because Bauhaus shot that one too. Prince looks incredible. The song is fantastic.
I love all the composites,
so
like
great.
It's all these overlaying
so
images
many composite shots.
And having the clouds behind them the whole time. It's just like it's so from its decade, and also I find every single composition to be honestly beautiful too, even with the what you would I guess call dated effects. But a lot of those effects, interestingly enough, are now coming back with a lot of pop, because I do think that people are finding it to be an interesting image. Just all those shots overlaying each other is a really cool aesthetic.
So should we get to like the melodramatic death scene?
I would love to. Let's do it.
So in this movie, Christopher Tracy does like get like killed by Mary's parents, who have like hired assassins to kill him so that like he can't like get into their family or whatever, because they're engaged to be married by the end of the movie. And I think that Prince is trying to play it as like this grand moment of tragedy, like Rebel Without a Cause or something. And I'm not sure that
he's also hiding her in like a grotto, which is like the place that they first make love in, which is like a really interesting detail.
I love their lovemaking scene in the grotto, because Bauhaus like superimposes a shot of them having sex with one another in the palm of her hand, and I think that's like such a Fassbinder kind of like beautiful shot, like awesome. Something he would have like conceived of for like The Marriage of Maria Malibran or something. I think he did that one. I might be wrong. So Prince dies at the end of this movie, and I think it's supposed to be this grand operatic moment of tragedy. And it's really unfortunate that it doesn't quite land that way. It's like my least favorite thing about the movie. And it's primarily because the song that plays over it, I think, is perhaps Prince's best song, but it's kind of like you can't quite like latch onto it because there's a lot of dialogue happening while the song is playing. And I think that, I don't know, I think that the song deserves a better movie than Under the Cherry Moon. And I like Under the Cherry Moon a lot, but like the song that's playing over his death scene is Sometimes It Snows in April, which is a song that gained a lot of relevance after Prince died, because Prince did die in April. And then D'Angelo paid tribute to him on the Late Night with Jimmy Fallon show ad performing that song, and it's an incredible performance. And I think that it was the kind of thing where like it was such a moment of genuine pathos for that artist to like perform that song. Like it actually influenced D'Angelo's career too, because when D'Angelo passed away recently, I think a lot of people pointed to that performance too, and they were just like this intertwined thing of like one artist like, you know, like paying tribute to another, and then this beautiful moment. And I wish that the film could have lifted that song up more, because like the diehard Prince fans basically point that song out as like a top 5 Prince song. But
yeah, that is interesting. It feels like it kind of gets drowned out by the scene, which is a weird thing to do, especially just because, for example, one of the ones that's not used as a musical sequence or like not an actual performance in the film, but like I think when Kiss hits the soundtrack, it's electric, and it overwhelms and makes that moment that Jamie was even questioning a little bit like better than you might think it is. And I think there was probably room to do that with this song too, if they could have done like more of like a if they did like more of like a pure cinema thing to the music and use the music expressively, but mostly instead like it is like a lot of
Rain.
Yeah, exactly. Because the song like gets pushed away like before it even really gets going, so that Jerome Benton can make a joke about how he has inherited a lot of money and he's a landlord now. And it's just like, it's you know,
let's go.
He gets,
I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one, Jerome.
It's such a weird note for that song to go out on, because it's such a beautiful song. And I've always been frustrated that like the song can't have its moment in the way that like Mountains does, like directly afterwards.
Yeah. Well, and his line too when he's fatally wounded, where he's like, "We had fun, didn't we?" And then he just kind of like smirks and dies, and it's interestingly performed, is how I will describe it. Yeah. It doesn't quite, I think, hit like the pathos register. It kind of hits more of like, he's speaking to the audience or something like that. Is kind of how the line is.
This was a good time,
He's got,
okay, so
yeah,
what if it's Prince saying goodbye to his film career? You know. We had fun, didn't
We had a
we?
good
True.
time. We had a good time, but I know they're not going to let me do this
Yeah.
again.
It does take on a double meaning, and maybe it makes more sense delivered that way
Yeah.
if that's the meaning of it, for
he,
sure.
he makes two more movies after this, one of which is a concert film called Sign of the Times, which I think is his best directed movie. There's actually a Citizen Kane homage in that. If you two have ever like watched the movie, like he recreate.
I've actually never seen it. I've
yeah.
had to watch this in forever.
In order, in one moment of staging, he recreates that moment in Citizen Kane where like the camera pushes through a window while like it's raining and it's like an overhead shot, like that classic moment. But like he does it in order to like get between songs, and it's like, oh, okay, so like you love Citizen Kane, you love Greg Toland, you want to like imitate him here, and it's really interesting. And then like the other film that he directed was Graffiti Bridge, which was marketed as a sequel to Purple Rain, and it's like the most Prince movie but also the worst Prince movie. So it's, you know, like I wouldn't necessarily go out of your way to watch that one, but you should watch Sign of the Times because it's just all him performing, and it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, I would love that. I'm sure. I mean, it's if I'm sure if it's capturing what, you know, the performances in Purple Rain did, but on a full scale, it's got to be amazing. So.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm going to check those out too. But as we wrap it up here, maybe we should hit the reductive rating round on Under the Cherry Moon. This one, I will say, on first watch, I'm going to land in the Jamie department. I'm going to go high 3 on this one. But I was a little moved by some of Willow's arguments about some of the postmodern flipping of some of the genre stuff that he's doing here. And I think knowing that that's what the movie was doing a little sooner will help on another go around with this movie, because even not fully ingesting that that's what it was doing right away, I did really respect that as a blank check, like, you made a successful movie, here's another one, go do what you want. You know, the fact that he's just like, everybody loved the musical sequences and they didn't like the part where I tried to make like a movie. So I'm going to do the opposite of all of that stuff. And I'm going to put the music mostly in the background. I'm only going to perform like 2 songs in the movie. One of them is during the credits. And the rest of the movie is going to be me imposing my taste and interests, which makes the movie more personal and less vain to me, which is interesting because a lot of people claimed at the time they felt this one was the full-on vanity project, and maybe they were just saying because clearly he's just doing more talented as a musician than as an actor, maybe that's why they're saying that, that's why it comes across that way. But I do think I do agree. I was moved by Willow's opinion or thoughts here that like this is, as a result, more him and more unique. And the fact that he is being like, I love these old Hollywood screwball rom-coms and I love these European art films, both of the French and the Italian variety, and all kinds of noirs and teen melodramas and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And hiring the right people to actually handsomely, technically pull all of that off, while at the same time, as a star, playfully messing with it and trying to disrupt it. And I think something like that was bound to just kind of upset people. Like, it was bound to antagonize an audience. Like, if you're a fan of Gold Diggers of 1933 or Casablanca or Rebel Without a Cause, or you're kind of like, well, Prince doesn't fit that. And I'm just, that's the point. That's the point of the movie. That's what he thinks too, I think. And he's trying
that impulse.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think that that's a really interesting idea. So I don't know. I'm struck by this one and a little struggling with it, but there's parts of it definitely that I think are flawed and don't totally work, but it has enough charm and energy and personality behind it because of Prince, whose juvenile sense of humor and horniness and flamboyant sense of style and experimentally clashing all of these styles is constantly interesting to look at the entire time. I wasn't bored watching this movie by any means. And even when he starts hitting some of the hustler falls in love with his mark, like romantic runaway drama tragedy stuff, and the notes don't totally hit, like especially his death, as Willow kind of highlighted, there's enough weird factor in the details and in, you know, some of the intelligent commentary he's actually trying to make, and some of the just bizarre performances and line deliveries, especially how funny him and Jerome are together. And that line where he's like, I'm a werewolf, bitch, kiss my ass, or whatever. Like, incredible. So I don't know. This is high 3 territory for me, and I see myself kind of coming back to this at some point.
Yeah, I just now I feel like I've gotten to know Prince so much in these last 2 days because of these 2 films. And this one specifically, I think you're right, Josh, and Willow. I think you were saying it earlier as well. Is that this feels just more exposing for him? It's really about his interests and what he loves about art and specifically cinema. And I just think to be able to make whatever you want and this is what you make, I have nothing but respect for it. I don't think all of it works, obviously. But I do think that there's legitimately, I don't know if it's like better character writing, but it's more interesting character writing than Purple Rain. And even the performances I think are probably stronger, even though this one will be probably more of a struggle for people just because it's so eccentric, it's so strange. But again, there's less what
concert sequences
Prince
to distract you from it.
Yes, exactly. You don't get the double encore to just wipe your brain away from all of the things you might have been questioning. But it's still, I think, something to kind of behold, especially if you're a Prince fan. And it's again, I feel like I learned a lot about him, more about him honestly than I did with Purple Rain with this one. And I like all the things that he's kind of playing with, like these older characters from that certain era of film where it almost felt like they liked their friends more than their love interests, is kind of a big play in this. And I like the way he plays with it. That bathtub scene is very funny. Really, Prince and Jerome together every single time has a really specific energy that's really fast paced and fun. Yeah. 3 out of 5 for now. I think it's probably going to stay there for me, to be honest with you. But it's I think it's good. It honestly even makes me want to go and watch the some of the other movies that people don't like as much. Or is it just the one besides the concert film?
Yeah,
is it the other? There's like one more.
There's one more after Side of the Times, which is Graffiti Bridge.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So
that'll be the one that Jamie Fives. I'm laying it down on the line right now.
I mean,
it's like actually this is the misunderstood masterpiece.
It's the only Prince movie with George Clinton.
It's cool that he got free reign to just make a movie.
Yeah. I feel like this is the best way to learn about an artist rather than just some typical biopic like I was saying with Purple Rain. So
yeah, I never know what to like. I never quite know where to land on Under the Cherry Moon, because in one respect I think it's brilliant, and then in another way I think that the flaws are obvious. So my deep love for Prince kind of powers through some of the criticisms that I have, where if I'm being like completely objective, I know that the movie doesn't quite reach the heights that Prince is reaching for. Like I mentioned, like the death scene is like really flat, but like this is another one that I grew up with, and it's hard for me to be like completely critical about it. I think I do think that it's a lot more clever and subversive and curious and intelligent than people have written about it in the past.
In many ways, totally. It is a legitimately better made film than Purple Rain is.
So I come across this real problem of being like, okay, it's like, is it better than Purple Rain? No, but like maybe it's I don't know what to do with that, because Purple Rain is obviously Purple Rain has Prince performing at First Avenue, which is like transcendent, like just, oh my God, like
that's the difference. That's what
exactly.
It comes down to, really.
I do wish that Under the Cherry Moon had more of Prince performing in it, because I think that if he had not been so rigid and like trying to kind of blow up his star power a little bit and kind of like cool the temperature on how popular he was in the mid 80s. I think that he maybe would have put more music in it, and I think that would have created another level of tension in it, because we talked specifically about the boys and girls scene, and that being like kind of a thesis on the film itself, like in a microcosm, that I think is really brilliant. I do think that
there could have been more scenes like that for sure. He could have even done like some Umbrellas of Cherbourg stuff or
I'm
something
sure he
too,
likes
or
Umbrellas
like
of Cherbourg.
I don't know.
I think the album attached to this film is brilliant. I think that Parade is a complete reimagining of his sound. Like he goes for this kind of very spare funk that's like kind of has like a European bass in it, and he like takes even more elements out of his music. Like Kiss is a very minimalist song, but it's brilliant. Like it was the one big hit attached to this film, and whenever it plays in the film just comes to life. I do wish that it had more of his music in it, even though his music is kind of like powering the film as like an OST from time to time. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to rate this movie. I'm going to give it a 4. I'm going to give it a 4, and that feels fair. I want to just like conclude my thoughts with this quote from Brian Eno, which I think kind of epitomizes like what is really interesting about Under the Cherry Moon, even if we can find faults in it. He said for The Wire in 1995, "I've been thinking a lot about the kinds of artists who don't censor their own work. I can think of 3 conspicuous ones. Picasso is one, Miles Davis is another, Prince is the third. These are people who just make art, and I think they have almost no critical self-censorship." And I think that is so accurate to how I feel about Under the Cherry Moon. Like it's such an expression of everything Prince wanted to do in movies that I can't help but love it. And you know, I just
unabashedly threw it out there and was like, I don't care what you think about it.
I would add a fourth artist to that, by the way, and that's Kate Bush. She tried her own hand in directing not at the same time. She tried her hand in directing in 1993, and she made a very David Lynch, Powell and Pressburger influenced riff on the Red Shoes that I really like, called The Line, the Cross, and the Curve. And it's a very strange movie in the same way that this is a very strange movie that tells us everything about the artist.
I've never seen that.
Oh, wow. I'll have to check that out. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to watch that right now.
I was looking at my Letterboxd, and I thought that this was funny. Will Sloan, friend of the show, said that this was Prince's Freddie Got Fingered, which I thought was really funny. Thought that was a really funny little thing. So shout out to Will as well.
I love I love that that's a compliment too, coming from Will.
Yes.
Like absolutely.
Oh,
it is.
Yes. Huge.
But also it would prepare people who aren't sure what they're about to watch. It might help them be like,
I think it helped me a little bit, yeah.
You know. There you go. Yeah.
Good movie.
It was a lot of fun. That's going to wrap it up for this week, though. That was Purple Rain from 1984 and Under the Cherry Moon from 1986. Thanks so much, Willow, for joining us, for bringing these films with you, for bringing your encyclopedic knowledge of Prince along. It was very informative for us too, not just for, I'm sure, some people listening.
Thank you. This was a blast.
It was so much fun. While we've got you here, is there anything that our listeners should be checking out that you've got coming out soon that you want to give a shout out to real quick?
Well, I wrote a book called Corpses, Fools, and Monsters: The History and Future of Transcendent Cinema that I'm really proud of, that I think that I hope that all of you will check out if you haven't already. It's my baby. I worked really hard on it. That came out in 2024.
Please do. We'll put it in the description. I read it. It's incredible. Please read it.
And I can't talk about it too much yet, but I'm drafting a book on Twin Peaks, and I'm working my way through that, and I'm hoping I can find a publisher for it. And I'm hoping I can have like some sort of more concrete information about that in the future. Like I'm always working on something. I have some DVD stuff in the pipeline. I just got announced that I wrote the booklet essay for Criterion's The Crying Game release. But I'm kind of like cool. So focused in David Lynch mode right now because I'm like trying to write a book.
Very cool. And awesome. People can also support you at your Patreon too, right?
You can do that. It's just my name, Willow Catelyn Maclay. And I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I'm still on Blue Sky pretty frequently. It's been really healthy for me to get off Twitter, honestly.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky sporadically if you want to follow me over there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Very cool. Can recommend doing all of that. For our listeners, we're going to be back in 1 week's time where we are going to be over on the Patreon feed, as Jamie alluded to, getting pretty dark with it with some in the British juvenile system. We're going to be talking about A Clockwork Orange. because it's we've been kind of putting it off. I just read the book recently, and it was on the mind, and I was like, you know what, it's maybe time. And I was like, I want to put all of the listeners through the ringer, so we're going to be pairing it with Alan Clark's Scum.
Oh gosh.
We're going to get real dark with it. We're going to get more sort of sci-fi and futuristic and dystopian, and then we're going to get pretty down and dirty and realistic in a pretty grim fashion next week over on the Patreon. So if you want to feel bad with us next week, that's what we're going to be doing. And then in 2 weeks time, we have a crazy episode coming up with a special guest who took their shot and was like, have you guys covered Unforgiven yet? Speaking of Clint Eastwood, we're about to compare Prince and Clint Eastwood once again. So we're going to be covering Unforgiven because it's somehow we've never decided to do it on the Patreon.
Yeah.
No one has ever picked it. And the guest just was like, have you guys done it? We were like, nope. And we're going to be pairing it with a very interesting combination, The Quick and the Dead by Sam Raimi.
Okay.
So the combination obviously being the acting of Gene Hackman, who is actually playing the villain in both films, and also obviously them being westerns, but one is Clint Eastwood full-on bummer revisionism, and Quick and the Dead is classic Sam Raimi, practically an animated cartoon of a western. So we are going to have fun doing that over on the main feed in 2 weeks. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up once again for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.